And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Right, intentional roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course 5:05 in the Pacific Coast. It's dark, bright, and early. Ready to go here. All cops are woke, exposed. We got some good stuff going on for you on today, Friday's roundtable. John Marlin, I'm actually traveling right now. I'm headed for Alaska, so I'm about 30 minutes outside Seattle. So before we talk about all cops are woke, I just want to tell you, no surprise, I decided to drive around with my family in Seattle and just see some of the city. And of course, what do I see on one of the government buildings? Can't say it on YouTube, right? FUCK ICE, a bunch of other stuff all over this one government building in the downtown area. Now, don't get me wrong. I drove around. I saw some beautiful parts of Seattle, some great shopping areas, some great restaurants. But of course, to no surprise, I saw one of those buildings. John, what are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised. I mean, it's all blue cities, dude. You know, I will say I'll give a shout out to Jessica Tisch and the NYPD because they did do a much better job at handling these protests recently, as opposed to the 3.5 years in the past that Eric Adams was running the show and all of his cronies that were running the NYPD in New York City. So I'll give a little bit of a shout out, but it hasn't lost me that he's up for re-election and he's trying to make it all look good right now. So, you know, I still say, you know, the majority of people running those details are highly incompetent. It's the rank and file of the New York City Police Department, that is actually keeping the glue together in New York City. And that's what's been happening these last really 12 years. But, so I will give a little shout out. I like the way they were moving, but I feel like there was some high level people moved to the side, particularly who were making command decisions like Kaz Daughtry and the rest of them. And they were actually letting competent people make the decisions of how to move those protesters and how to keep it somewhat legal. I mean, they still gave up the streets. I'm not saying that it was like totally whatever, but like it was better than I expected. I'll put it that way.
Well, it just shows we have zero expectations. It was just a little better. A little bit.
I mean, they were still breaking the law. I mean, they still, you know, they arrested 80 people one day. It should have been probably 800, but whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and by the way, they violated the protest settlement agreement because they had SRG out right off the bat. So like they didn't follow Adams' protocol. So, you know, whatever. We'll be paying millions of dollars down the road for those days. Sorry, Marlon. Sorry.
No. Those protest agreement, it all matters until until it doesn't, you know, until it's convenient for them, you know, which is like every other rule in the NYPD these days. But yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, chat. We should have a pretty good discussion this morning, and Seattle is one of those places where, you know, I've never heard good things about. So it's interesting hearing that at least their downtown is nice. But I hope you get out of there before the next ICE protest, Eric.
Well, so excuse me. I had promised Derek one of his spots that he wanted to go to was Alaska, and we kept talking about it. And you know, I prepare myself mentally for the drive, but so excuse me. So we decided we're gonna go anyway. So I pushed it pretty far from LA, so we've been just taking breaks here and there. So gonna take it slow. My goal is to get there around by July 4th. This way we start being a little warmer and we can celebrate July 4th. I don't want to be in Canada for July 4th, so I'm about 2 hours to cross the border. Another liberal place. I got some spots to drive to. So let's get into today's topic, right? Obviously, we're talking about all cops are woke. An article just surfaced recently and talking some information about the case where John and I allege allegation of threats towards us. Now, what's interesting about all cops are woke is they have a suspect identified. But of course, the New York City Police Department won't make an arrest. John and I have been referred, right? It's interesting, right? The NYPD makes arrest. You know, you think they would want to topple a situation like this. All cops are woke. The prime suspect was a sergeant for the New York City Police Department. He was employed by the New York City Police Department when these threats were made towards John and myself, and especially targeting our children. Some crazy, heinous stuff. But what's interesting is the NYPD doesn't want to make an arrest. They've referred it to Florida. They told us to file in Florida. Now, I think it's quite interesting. I haven't been in Florida in a long time. I've been traveling. Obviously, I have a residence there. I have an apartment there, but I haven't been in Florida in a long time. I've been traveling. So at the time of the threats, I was living in Malaysia. Should I report it to Malaysia? This is insane. He was employed by the New York City Police Department. The prime suspect, his name is Sean Mohabir. And at the time of the threats, it was coming from New York. Does it matter where we are? The NYPD's already done the investigation. They should have notified the FBI themselves and work with their federal partners. To me, listen, obviously, most of us here, active retired, are cops or were cops, and most of us here have perspicacious mindsets, and we're pretty intuitive saying, wait a minute, why doesn't the NYPD want to make the arrest? Make an arrest. And to me, that says to me, they don't want him to speak and find out what the real case is and what's really going on, because he's the squeaky wheel. If Sean Mohabir gets arrested, the can of worms opens from the inside, and he's going to provide all the information and what's really going on and who's really behind it.
So, let's just go back to that time, because, there's been several articles written about this. There was one in the City, great article, a Post, great article. But I don't, I've spoken to Eric about this, and I've spoken to other people about this. And even like the reporters who were interested in this, I spoke to them about this. And I'm like, listen, this story is so convoluted. But the bottom line is this. It was the targeting of New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD that was coming after this podcast. Sean Mohabir didn't act on his own. The CRT citywide captain, who's now an inspector, and his entire citywide CRT team, along with their attorney, didn't one day miraculously come on and say, hey, let's use our own names, go on John's Instagram and start threatening him and Eric and tell him that they better stop the podcast and get off of the line. Didn't just happen. It doesn't just happen that all of this starts in one weekend. Kaz is up on the stage, the famous thing where we end the show with, where Kaz is saying there's a bunch of retired guys. That's the same weekend, people. That's the same weekend. Same weekend, John Shell's sending out tweets. Same weekend, he's peeking at my LinkedIn nonstop in the middle of the night. So the bottom line is this. Is Sean Mohabir a piece of garbage? Yeah. Does he deserve to be a cop? No. But there are probably at least 20, 30 people that don't deserve to be police officers that are highly corrupted, and this is involved in. So we have the CRT team coming after us. We have this all cops are woke handle coming after us. And by the way, myself and Eric said numerous times that, yes, there is an NYPD sergeant behind it, but there are numerous others behind it too. And according to Internal Affairs Bureau, Sean Mohabir he admitted to creating those images that you see that went viral where we're coming after your kids, but he didn't admit to posting it. So what does that tell you? There's somebody else involved, right? So we have Sean Mohabir and all cops are woke, and notably other people who are posting it, right? There were other people behind the account. We have the entire citywide CRT team. We have Kaz Daughtry saying crap. We have their attorney saying crap. We have John Shell saying crap. We have a known criminal out of the Bronx coming, threatening myself, right? Same weekend. All of this is going on. And we're supposed to just be like, oh, yeah, no, it's all a coincidence. It's all a coincidence. This wasn't a coordinated threat smear campaign that was happening. So, I don't fault the media for not reporting it properly. I'm just saying it has not been reported properly. This has been a targeted smear threatening campaign that was orchestrated by the upper echelon in the NYPD in conjunction with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And it's clear as day.
Yeah, as we go through the documents and we take a look at everything, I think we're gonna find a common thread here that these guys all seem to work together. There seem to be like a common agenda amongst all of them, and I think that's something to keep in mind because that agenda is very important for the city. In terms of Eric Adams' policy. And every time they go on the news, especially in the case of Kaz and Chell, they're constantly bringing this up. They're constantly talking about this and it. So it's very curious that when you look at them, you see the common threads connecting all of them. And should we look at that and think that that's just coincidence? I don't think any reasonable person can at this point.
Now, I always say, and I believe this, and I believe this my entire life. I don't believe in coincidence, especially when it comes to a case like this. It's completely coordinated, orchestrated, and targeted. Now, at the time when All Cops Awoke started to really take a centric focus on John and myself, it was particularly on Instagram. We weren't being followed by All Cops Awoke, and we were not following All Cops Awoke. But yet, every time we made a post, whether it was something personalized to our accounts or something to do with the podcast, immediately All Cops Awoke responded. Now, what's interesting about that with this fake moniker is John and I both noticed that it was different personalities. So there's no doubt about it. At the time, we made the determination that All Cops Awoke is not just one member of the service, but several members of the service. And there's no coincidence. And there's no strike of fate here, okay? If you look back, it was around October, November of 2023, where Kaz Daughtry gives that infamous speech at a gala talking about the two retired lieutenants. Just talking about myself and John. At the same time, we're getting attacks by the citywide response team, by the captain, lieutenants, several others on that team, trying to shut down this podcast, trying to intimidate us. It's kind of funny, obviously, they didn't. Now, John and I were pretty tolerable of that. And at the same time, we're getting stalked and we're getting smeared and slandered by this fake moniker, All Cops Awoke. And we're pretty tolerable of it. But at some point, it just became so heinous and out of control is when we started to receive death threats towards our kids. And at that point, we both realized this person should not even be a cop, completely unhinged and unstable. However, with that being said, there's no doubt in my mind, Sean Mohabir is the prime suspect. And again, go back to what John said. John said, and this is true, this is the information that we have, credible information, and it stems from the DCPI, that Sean Mohabir admits to making these posts, but not actually sending them. So the question is, and why hasn't the NYPD released this information, which is why we could assume Sean Mohabir has not been arrested by the NYPD, is who did send these posts? Who else is involved? Now, I agree with John. There's no doubt in my mind that Sean Mohabir should not be a cop. But there's no doubt in my mind that he did not act alone. Because what is the MO? What's the motive here? Both John and myself have never met Sean Mohabir. I have no idea up to this point, after doing our own investigation, what he looks like. Completely different path in life, right? Sean Mohabir is about 30 years old. Only a couple of years on the job. John and I had both retired. Just different paths in life. So what is the motive? He just picked up one day and decided, let me target these two retired lieutenants. Why? Even if he didn't like us and saw us as opposition, why get to this point to put your career on the line and to put your life on the line? So there's no doubt in my mind, either he was directed to do it, influenced, encouraged, or he took it upon himself to prove to the upper echelon or those that are involved that he's a team player. Team player, because there's no doubt in my mind, there's a team from the NYPD that has targeted this podcast, and that is their full operational existence in the NYPD to take down this podcast. John, what are your thoughts on that? Because what do we also notice? ITB received a unit citation. Marlon, what was that, 2024 or 2023 that they received a unit citation? So the question is, did they receive that unit citation for targeting this podcast? To me, that's something that strikes in my mind. And there's something else, right? Do we believe in coincidence? I don't. There's 79 precincts, 12 transit districts, and 9 PSAs. And at the height of the allegation that John and I made towards the internal affairs of All Cops Are Woke, Sean Lisco in the detective squad in the 4-5 precinct attacks John and myself on social media and defends All Cops Are Woke. And what's interesting about that? In the confines of the 4-5 precinct, what's infamous and what's located in the 4-5 precinct? Consofritos. So does it just happens to be? Is that a crazy coincidence that Consofritos just happens to be the 4-5 precinct? It just happens to be that John's getting threatened by a mobster, Jimmy Rodriguez, and at the same time, a detective from the 4-5 squad is calling us rats and defending All Cops Are Woke? These are way too many coincidences that have not been fully investigated by the NYPD Internal Affairs, because the NYPD Internal Affairs are henchmen for the upper echelon and protect heinous acts just like this.
The bottom line is this: a lot of people are just getting misconstrued about what happens. So let's just focus on All Cops Are Woke for a second. So obviously, it was multiple accounts. It was multiple people running the account. Sean Mohabir takes the fall, right? He admits to creating it, but not to posting it, right? Okay. So NYPD Internal Affairs conducted an investigation. Now, I've had calls throughout this last year from lieutenants, from captains, from inspectors, from chiefs, from cops, from detectives, from everyone and their mother telling me, John, you're a lieutenant. You know that it's where the complainant resides. And I'm like, my response has always been I'm a lieutenant who actually read the complaint reporting guide, unlike the rest of you. I'm like, and I'm very familiar with how reports are taken and where they will go. And I know that it is who will conduct the investigation who determines it. Now, it doesn't escape me that the investigation was already conducted by the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau. And they determined who was making the threats, right? So who would prosecute that case in that situation? Who would make the arrest? Who would be the governing body? The DA in the boroughs where Sean Mohabir was at the time of those threats that they were made. Right? It's not going to be able, oh, John was home in Florida, so the Florida DA is going to prosecute them. No, that's not how that works. So I get that you guys don't understand the complaint reporting guide or how complaints work or how complaints are taken, but I don't understand how you guys have been cops for so long and you don't understand any of this. And it fails on its face, even the part of them conducting the investigation, because again, it's a member of service. It's a member of service. And clearly, the Internal Affairs Bureau stonewalled this entire investigation because the entire investigation did not surface and circle all just around Sean Mohabir. The allegation was that the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, including New York City Mayor Eric Adams, are colluding with known criminals, running our names in databases, giving them to known criminals, putting out information, personal information that can only be found in NYPD computers, online, giving it to criminals, giving it to perps, giving it to each other, while there are numerous heads of all of the departments in charge in New York City, including Tanya Kinsella, who everyone tells me they love and is a great person. But I'm sorry, Tanya Kinsella's office, I don't know if she ordered it or she didn't, but they're calling around asking where I live, where I work. All at the same time. Where do I live? Where do I work? CRT's coming. Sean Lisco from the 4-5. Oh, what business is in the 4-5? Oh, the same business owner that's partners with Ed Caban's brother that's threatening me. So we did criminal association. We did drumming up criminal charges. We had allegations through the roof. And the only thing that the NYPD Internal Affairs could seem to come up with is that Sean Mohabir possibly committed a crime outside of their jurisdiction. I mean, there is no FBI that needs to be notified. there is no nothing. I mean, the FBI needs to be notified that the NYPD is systemically corrupt and they covered up a criminal investigation and they're colluding with known criminals and they're targeting their critics and they're trying to suppress First Amendment speech. Yeah, I could see that possibly the FBI would want to be involved in that. But other than that, there's no reason for the FBI to get involved in the arrest or the criminal prosecution of Sean Mohabir and many other individuals. Right? Again, let's just think about that. CRT team's attacking us. Shell's attacking us. Kaz is attacking us. A lawyer is attacking us from the NYPD. And we have this kid, a known criminal, who's in conjunction with the police commissioner's brother at the time, threatening us, all in the same weekend. And then you get this kid from the 4-5 precinct who's trying to prosecute the case and run defense for all cops are woke. What is in the 4-5? Oh, that's right. Con Sofritos, the business where the police commissioner's brother is operating and his business partner is threatening.
Ding, ding, ding.
And by the way, they're all looking through all of my social media, and only the brave people that I know called me to let me know, yo, they're calling around asking where you live and where you work. I'm sure they called a bunch of cowards that never said a word to me about it.
Yeah. I've said before, like, this department seems to have lost its mind ever since the mandate. You look at some of these guys' records, and some of these guys are very active cops. And sure, we don't know the record of Mohabir, but this guy studied and he got promoted. So why would you, after having put in all this work into this department, after having made a career out of this department, why would they be so willing to do this, to put their careers at risk and potentially, get locked up? Certainly Sean Mohabir, if that was something you or I did, we'd have all been facing a case right now. So that's something that I don't understand. It's like, after the mandate, like it's like there are parts of this department that completely lost their mind and think things that were not okay in years prior it's just now okay to do, and now okay to just do it so blatantly, and in order to look at that, you have to think about the mentality of the people at the top. And the mentality they have is that it was our time and that they were now in control of the department. And that mentality, as we go on, you'll see is kind of trickling down to the lower ranks, because to me, the only thing that makes sense why they would do this is that they felt that they had some sort of a mandate from above that it was going to be okay, that it's okay to not do that, whereas years ago you'd have been locked up for it,
But there's no doubt in my mind that not necessarily was there a mandate, but if you're connected, if you're a cop on this job or a frontline supervisor, and you're connected to this upper echelon, and when I say this upper echelon, specifically when we talk about all cops are woke, if you're connected to John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, well, there's certain rules that just don't apply to you. And we know that because I don't know any cop, and Marlon and John, you could probably say the same thing. I don't know any cop that during our time on the job, and I'm sure now is probably the same for general population, that would be comfortable enough to go on social media and attack a podcast or any entity, especially while you're working, while you're actually on duty, and feel comfortable with actually putting stuff on social media, slander, defamation, and even actually openly admitting that you're, if you're going to attack a retired cop, admitting that you utilize the NYPD resources to investigate John's record, my record, and openly say that on social media. Who would be comfortable enough, unless you had protection, and the protection of John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, or someone like that from the upper echelon, right? That's why we always say rules for thee and not for me. Shout out to the comments here. our friends and listeners, you're so important to this podcast to be engaged and part of it. So Patrick Donahue makes a couple of comments here. I just want to say, Pat, I was just being facetious. He said, Pat says, to be honest, I don't think that they got a citation for talking this podcast. Could they? Possibly, but I'm being facetious. It just shows the great lengths that this upper echelon and what we have determined as a coordinated attack towards this podcast will take, including the threats to our children. Now, I'll tell you what, I was surprised at the time that other cops that are active right now were not alarmed by this or are not admitting to be alarmed by this. A lot of people have contacted me and said, no way it's a member of the service. No way. I said, absolutely is. And I think they said that because they didn't want to believe that a member of the service, someone that they work with, could actually be capable of this, or the job. And when I say the job, I always say the job is people, right? The upper echelon could be capable of a coordinated attack such as this. So, Pat, thank you so much. Pat says, full disclosure, he actually knows Sean Lisco since he's a child. And he does say if you have the information and you have the proof, put it on the table. So, obviously, we don't have the exact proof that Sean Lisco is connected to.
Wait. Time out. We have the exact proof that Sean Lisco is connected. I've posted it on all my social medias. Exactly what he said, that all cops are woke is just a 16-year-old girl from Nebraska that he communicates with and finds very funny. And I asked him, that's very strange for a married man, an NYPD police detective, to be communicating with a 16-year-old girl. And where he throws out numerous claims, including the day that myself and Eric called IAB and we're like, all right, enough of this. We're going to make them investigate themselves now. Including that day, Sean Lisco comes out onto our Instagram and says, is anyone still listening to these guys that called IAB? How did Sean Lisco know that? I wonder.
Now, what I was saying, you're absolutely right. We do have the proof that Sean Lisco works in a 4-5 and was defending all cops are woke. And that was the part that was alarming to me. Is his claim was, I hope he's being facetious. His claim is that all cops are woke was actually a 16-year-old girl from Nebraska. The question is, why you actually communicated with a 16-year-old girl? What I would say is, do we have significant proof that there's a connection of Sean Lisco to Jimmy Rodriguez and Ed Caban and Jimmy Caban at Concefritos? No, we don't have the exact proof. But again, what are the chances that Sean Lisco is defending all cops are woke and works in the 4-5 squad and Concefritos is there? I mean, with the vast, large city and the dense volume of locations that we have, to me, it's just too coincidence at that point. And again, I don't believe in coincidence, but it's important to know, to go back to that fact that I was saying. I was alarmed that no cop stood up and said, hey, this is a problem, that we need to, find out who this person is or stand behind you. We're talking about getting threats to our children. People say this is a family. What kind of family is it when you're not willing to stand up? At that point, I would think that draws the line. This is someone that should not be carrying a firearm. Now, again, what's even, I think, deeper and is alarming and crazy by this is there's no doubt in my mind that he didn't act alone. The question is, who did he act with? Why did the NYPD not want to make an arrest? I mean, what am I supposed to do? According to the NYPD, John should file in Florida because that's where he resides. Now, I reside in Florida also. That's where my residence is. But I've been traveling, and at the time I was in Malaysia. So according to the NYPD's ideology, should I file with the authorities in Malaysia? Should they be the ones who investigate this? There's no doubt most of us here are active and retired, and we understand how the complete report guide works. The NYPD already investigated it. It's a member of the service. Every reason to believe it was a member of the service, sometimes on duty, maybe not. The NYPD has already done their investigation. And the question is, why do they not want to make the arrest? What story does Sean Mohabir have to tell? So Sean Mohabir, if you're watching this, and I'm sure you will, you're invited to come on this podcast and tell us your story. Tell us what really happened, because right now, the blame is pointed towards you.
Yeah, so Sean Lisco, I'm not going to pull all these up because there's a million of them. Don't ask them any question. It only makes them angry. Whatever. Oh, see, here's Sean Lisco, Woodlawn 15, by the way, Woodlawn in the Bronx. That was his Instagram handle, where he was celebrating, coercing old people into putting pharmaceutical product into their body that he knows nothing about. One that's been pulled off the market as of late. Okay, yeah, but he won an award for that because he's a true hero, Sean Lisco. So thank you, Sean. Thank you for doing that to Grandma and Grandpa. You're no better than Andrew Cuomo, who you probably support. So he said, didn't these guys call IAB about getting bullied by a meme page? Sean, how do we know that? And so do we know that he knows Jimmy Rodriguez in the upper echelon of the NYPD and the citywide CRT team and all that? No, we don't. But it's just a coincidence that someone's going to come on using their own page that has all of their personal information on the same day that all of the same weekend that's all of this is going on. And they already know we called internal affairs. They already know. So I'm like, there's a lot of coincidences there. Ton of coincidence. The other coincidence is Sean Mohabir, same last name as the maiden name of Tanya Kinsella, right? And so I, for a long time, figured that Tanya Kinsella is related to Sean Mohabir. They work together in PSA 1. Her staff is calling around asking about where I work, where I live, right? And I know why they were doing it. They were doing it because they were going to make fake allegations about me. But I own my own businesses. So I came out on this podcast and I said, you could call me, I'll give you my number, and you could let me know how you feel about me and try to get me fired from the businesses I own. But it's not going to work. But that's what they were doing. It was a complete, utter smear campaign, while running our names in computers. So is it a coincidence that Sean Lisco just came out of nowhere? I mean, I don't think so. I personally, in my opinion, I think he's directly connected and involved to Shell, to Kaz, to Jimmy Rodriguez, to Ed Caban, to every single person we just mentioned. I don't see any way he's not. I mean, it's possible that he's not. So to get back to Kinsella, right, because there are some coincidences. There are things that are coincidences, right? I'm like, this whole time, I'm thinking that. I know Eric's thinking that. I mean, I think basically everyone's thinking that. And Marlon conducts a little research. And then, it's still possible that somehow he's related to Tanya Kinsella. But I don't think so after watching this video. And Juju, we'll get to your question about how we're still up. We'll show you all of the targeting that's happened against this podcast, all of the daily, hourly complaints that happen against this podcast on every platform, just like a certain handle that was run by, in my opinion, was run by the then chief of patrol of the NYPD, said that they were going to completely continue to target us and to file complaints to Apple and to Spotify and to YouTube and to X and to Instagram, and all that's still going on today. And that's why we're completely shadow banned. Even though we still continue to grow, I mean, this podcast should probably have millions of subscribers based on the fact we get millions of views each month. So it should be a lot more successful than it is currently. And that's due to the fact of all of the shadow banning, because of all of the constant complaints. And I wonder who has time in their day to sit there all day long and drop complaints about a couple of retired guys' social media handles and their podcast on every single platform. I wonder, is it somebody that's getting paid in overtime? Is there somebody sitting in ITB? Is there someone sitting in the first steps office or the police commissioner's office or the chief of department's office? I wonder. I sincerely wonder. But hey, it's probably just a coincidence. We probably just have that many haters that sit there all day long and file complaints against this podcast. But that's nothing. So Marlon does a little research, and here we go. And there's Tanya Kinsella sitting there. Let's see Sean Mohabir. Here he comes.
Sean Mohabir.
So she's like, oh, that's my last name. She looks at him. He worked in PSA 1 when she was there previously.
Joseph Nicoletti.
No hug, no nothing, right? He shakes Vinny's hands from Florida right there. There's no hug, there's no nothing. The thing that's notable about this is the time when Ed Caban's running the police department, and the promotion ceremonies are completely unprofessional, and there's people blowing whistles, and everybody's getting the 5-6 pounds, and everyone's woo, and everyone has a different country's flag other than the country they live in and that supports them and they pay taxes in. All this crazy nonsense that's going on. And are they related? Doesn't look like it to me. It's possible, but that is just a coincidence. Everything else, I don't think so.
Listen, at this point, I haven't made a final determination, John. I'm not completely sold whether they're related or not. The point of this is, and you know what? Let's go to this comment here. QCB says, Eric, wasn't Kinsella a police officer in the 120 when you were there? And the answer is that yes, both John and myself. Maybe she knew you from there. Yeah, she did know me for that. She knows me now. She actually called me when my son passed to send her condolences, and I haven't spoken to years. But that's not the point. The point of this also is, what did Internal Affairs do in their investigation? Because that's the whole point, right? When someone's exonerated, we want to determine whether they committed an act or not. So the Internal Affairs should do a full investigation. There's no doubt in my mind. They've narrowly directed this investigation to go a certain way and to leave out numerous allegations and charges against police officers and the upper echelon leadership, and all roads that lead to Eric Adams with this. That substantial evidence that John had provided that has just been completely ignored, and we've been stonewalled in this investigation. So the question I would like to know is, did Internal Affairs make a determination if Mohabir is related to Tanya or not? That's something that we should know. They should say, hey, there is a coincidence, and we've determined there's no relation. So, if you made the assumption or some evidence led to Tanya, that's something that the Internal Affairs should disclose to John and myself. But they haven't disclosed any information to us. To just even go back to when All Cops Are Woke was identified, our first case investigator from Internal Affairs first would not provide us the information as far as Sean Mohabir's name. All we were told is that it was a member of the service in the rank of sergeant who, as a result of this investigation, resigned from the job, and that we should feel safe at this point. And I said that doesn't even make any sense. We should be more alarmed. So this person lost his career, resigned. Well, didn't even lose, right? He should have been terminated, but resigned as a result of this investigation, the allegations that we made. And we should feel safe at this point when he knows where we live. We don't know where he lives. We don't know what he looks like. We don't know anything about this member of the service. But what we do know is that they're unstable and unhinged. And I don't care, even if someone says, well, he was directed to do this, he was told to do this. Who in their right mind, if you're told, I tell you right now, if you got a serious problem, if you're told by the leadership to send 2 retired lieutenants death threats and pictures of zip ties directed towards where we live, and then pictures of children and references to our kids, and telling us your kids should have a long life, well, then you got a serious problem. Then you're a serious coward if you allow someone to make you do that. I mean, we have to go back and say to ourselves, what is the motive? Right, Marlon, let's talk about that. What is the motive here? Because Sean Mohabir ever met John and myself in person. We don't know him. He doesn't know us. So what is the motive? There has to be a motive.
Yeah. There's a lot of strange things here. First of all, how is he promoted to sergeant? You know, you guys were already talking about this online, and Sean is promoted to sergeant. And not only that, but you're on probation, so he's promoted, and he's allowed to basically walk out the door with the sergeant shield. Are we all supposed to look at that and think that's just that's just coincidence? They didn't know. It just, in the face of logic, when you look at all of this, there's a lot of questions that I have. In fact, before Sean he made boss on the I believe the 23rd of September. He was transferred out of ITB to PSA 3 on the 18th of September, which in itself is kind of odd. I've never heard of how do you get transferred out of your command to another command like days before you get promoted? But the other thing that's strange is that when you look at the 58, Sean shows up in the promotion. He showed up as having spent time at Uniform Promotions Training Unit. Whereas when he put in his papers for retirement, he was listed as PSA 3. So I've asked this question before. Did this guy actually do any time as a sergeant in PSA 3? Or was he on paper, was he on PSA 3, but they really kept him in the academy and to keep him away from further scrutiny as they were waiting to see how this case would play out? Because it seems to me that if you guys didn't press further on this, nothing was going to happen to him. You know, I mean, look at the time span in between leaving. He left ITB in September, and he got promoted a couple days after that, and he didn't leave the job until March of 2024. And not only that, but he actually put in his papers in October, right? But it seems like he withdrew those papers. So here's the question: what made him withdraw his papers? You know, it seems to me again like they said, let's see how this plays out. Let's wait and see, because again, he left ITB September, left the job in March, but first submitted his papers to leave the job in October, and then resented those papers. So there's a huge time frame in that. And Internal Affairs drops they suspended him in January. No, I'm sorry. They suspended him in March, and the day after is when he officially heads for the exit. So the question is, what happened during that span of time that made what happened? Why did he pull his papers? Are we supposed to think logically that there was nothing kind of funny about all of that?
No, it's completely ridiculous. IAB completely ignored this. I mean, they had a deranged sergeant sending death threats. They had a cop like Sean Lisco trying to say, oh, no, this is completely normal. It's just a 16-year-old girl I talked to. And those threats really weren't against your kids. You can't really do anything about it. Oh, and by the way, no one go on these pages because these guys called IAB. Again, how did he know? So I don't know that he's a God-fearing Christian. I don't give a shit that he was an altar boy. To me, Sean Lisco is a piece of shit. And I'll tell him right to his face. And because he knows something and he knew something and he tried to run cover for someone who threatened the life of my kids and Eric's kids. So he's not a God-fearing anything. He's a phony. Like the same way he ran out and thought he was a hero for giving people medical advice that he knows nothing about. I didn't know he was a doctor. I didn't know he knew anything about vaccines or anything else. So, I get you're friends with him, but he's a piece of shit. And, he's going to have to answer. So he should fear God because he's going to have to answer for that one day, 100%. And Sal Greco brings up a great point about Sean Lisco, not to get off Sean Mohabir, Sean Lisco's obvious friend. Sean Lisco messaged me and wanted me to take down a story on my Instagram. That story involved Jimmy Rodriguez. And yes, I have it documented. Right? And absolutely nothing has been done to anybody, including Sean Mohabir, right? What was, the story in the post said that he was how did they explain it? He resigned. An NYPD sergeant accusing death threats against podcaster resigns. He didn't technically resign. Technically retired. He retired. He walked out the door with a gun. That was it. Walked out the door with a badge and a gun. Nothing happened to him. There was no arrest made. He was working in the NYPD while we made it. He stayed working in the NYPD for months. They did absolutely nothing to him. I personally believe the GO-15 wasn't even conducted properly. I believe there was a very long conversation prior to that. He knew the questions he was going to be asked, and he knew he was going to walk out the door. And they didn't ask any of the questions because they didn't want to implicate anybody in it. And that's why he has not been arrested. Because all roads lead back to Eric Adams and the upper echelon and everybody else. And you're going to see all of the little good altar boys who were just doing their job and they didn't know. It was just these bad retired guys. So what? He was threatening their kids' lives. So what? They said something bad. They did an episode about Kaz Daughtry where they said that he was a driver, which he was. They did an episode where they said that they said that car pursuits aren't a good thing. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh my God. Let's threaten the lives of their kids and send known criminals at them, and let's do all that. You know, that's the God-fearing man that Sean Lisco is, Sean Mohabir is, Ed Caban, Eric Adams, John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, Tony Kinsella, and the rest of these clowns. They're clowns. And Juju, you're a clown too. You're a clown too. And by the way, I'll be in New York in a couple of weeks, Juju. I'm going to let you know all of my locations. So, because you keep saying you're going to come see me and I never see you. It's weird. I'm everywhere and you ain't never there. It's very weird.
Yeah. Let's talk about one more thing. I think, what's interesting also, and a lot of people don't know this, but might as well release this information at this point. So when Sean Lisco started to get in contact with John and myself on social media, I mean, he came out of nowhere. I never heard this kid's name ever. I worked in the Bronx. I actually lived in the 405 a long time. I never heard this kid's name. I have no idea who he is. I never met him. But once he started to contact John and myself on social media and defend All Cops Are Woke, we started to go through his social media page and as far back as we could on Instagram. And what do we find? We found in his Instagram photos some of the same exact photos that were on All Cops Are Woke's page. So what are the chances? Because way before the threat started, when All Cops Are Woke was following John and myself, they would put out some funny memes, even stuff that we would thought was funny. We would laugh about it until it got to the point that we would threaten our kids. But some of those memes that we found were actually on Sean Lisco's page also, and All Cops Are Woke. So there's no doubt there's a relationship there. Pat, I get it. You know the kid since he grew up. He said he was a God-fearing kid. But the bottom line, same thing as John said, I think he's a piece of garbage, complete coward. Came out of nowhere, and think about that. You have fellow cops working in the NYPD and internal affairs, and you're calling us rats for making a claim. So is this how you feel about other cops right now that are working on the job? Is this what we do? I mean, honestly, this is why I say it's alarming. And I've said it before. If you defend All Cops Are Woke, you're no friend of mine. If you can threaten someone's kids, I mean, I think that crosses boundaries for everyone. I think at some point there has to be a limit, and children should be the limit. That's the point where John and I said, okay, enough's enough. We were pretty tolerable. We would have never made a complaint, but when we started to get threats towards our kids, you know what? This is someone that should not have a gun. There's just too many. There's too many ties here. There's too many things connected. Sean Lisco, you're a piece of shit, honestly, and yet, right, Martin? We had a conversation yesterday. How did this kid get to the 4-5 squad with all this stuff going on? And you know what? Let's say he was there. Let's say he was there already. But after this investigation, how could he still be in the detective squad? I mean, he should have been disciplined properly. There's absolutely no discipline here. And yet, he was actually the squad detective that was assigned to investigate the case where the police officer off duty was just robbed violently by two savages that were just apprehended out of state. And yet that was the face of this investigation. Sean Lisco is the one. Here you go. Life after the job puts Emerald Society. Yes. There's no doubt in my mind. There's definitely a connection there. He's part of the Emerald Society. So obviously he must be hooked up. And again, it goes back to what we said, John, when we made this complaint. We documented everything on email because we said we would be completely stonewalled. This investigation would go nowhere. Martin, you said it. Where's this investigation going? Absolutely nowhere. It's going nowhere. We push so hard. We put all the information out in the public. The upper echelon watches this podcast, and they were hoping that it would just go away. And now it won't go away because we're still putting this information out there. Is it going anywhere? I don't know. Does it matter at this point? No. But the podcast is not going away, and that's the point.
Yeah. So what Eric is referencing is Lisco has some interesting things on his record, like a discipline. He was disciplined in 2020. Let me pull it up for a second. He was disciplined in August of 2024 for looking at inquiries on a computer unrelated to official department business. So that's very curious, considering, what John has already told you guys. And the interesting thing about that is he only received a command discipline for it. And not only that, but he was made detective in May of 2023. So that means, again, you're on probation. So, and not only that, but it's a shame that CCRB has this power, but the fact is that he's also on the no testify list for the Bronx DA. So I don't understand how you could remain on the squad for that. But I'm not going to keep in mind, guys, that Sean Lisco has 400 collars. So this guy was an active cop. And I do tip my hat to that, because we talk about active cops on hand, the need for guys to, do their job and do it as best they can. And he was an active cop, which goes back to what I said earlier, that part of his job lost their mind, because you're an active cop, your career seems to be on a great track. You're already in the squad. He came on the job in 2012, and by certainly by 2024, he's in the squad. So your track is on a pretty good timetable right now. But why would you do this? Why would you sacrifice your career, all the hard work you've put into it, for something as dumb as that? And the question is, why did he only receive a command discipline for that? And what we have to wonder right now is who did he look up? What did he look up on that computer? Considering, again, all that we know that happened during that same time frame, it's very curious that happened.
Yeah. So no criminal association charge. Oh, he just looked up mine and Eric's stuff, but he never gave that information to anybody, right? We could just determine that right off the bat, even though he's telling Sal Greco to pull down posts related to Jimmy Rodriguez, right? We could just, even though he's running cover for people who are threatening little children's lives. And pal, we're not mad at you. I'm just mad when I relive thinking about all of this stuff, because it really enrages me. And what Marlon's saying is really the stuff that gets me. Like, I'm not even that mad at the citywide CRT or Sean Lisco or Sean Mohabir. I just think that they're morons. I think that they're cowards. I think that inspector of police, who was the captain of police, I think he's a loser. I think he's a coward. If my boss came to me and was like, yo, this guy's criticizing me online, or he said this, I want you to take your whole team and start threatening them and make them get offline and tell them that you're going to run stuff, do whatever you got to do. And all of these, and tells all these other idiots, I'm going to be like, all right, bro, grow a pair of balls. Who cares? People say shit about me every day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I like, that's the thing that bothers me, is like that this was orchestrated from the top. And these little clowns who were ballless come out and clearly they're ballless. Like, I'm not saying that they're cowardly, like with no backup. They're ballless. Like, yeah, are they good cops? A lot of them, yeah, they are. But like, they're great order takers, and they're loyal to a fault. Because what Marlon's saying is really the problem here. Who in their right mind, that the entire upper echelon of the NYPD is targeting the podcast. I mean, it was clear as day. That everyone's watching the podcast. That IAB's monitoring the podcast. That legal's monitoring the podcast. That transcripts are coming through. That all of the posts that I put out every day are being monitored and transcripts are going on. And Kaz and Shell and all of their people are going through the post to see who's commenting and who's not commenting. And that's clear as day. We've had people in here that say, oh, the minute I started commenting on your stuff, my LinkedIn account's getting bombarded by all these views, right? I mean, until today, I look at my LinkedIn account, I'm hysterical laughing, all these people that look at the drone captain, this guy, that guy, and then I friend request all of them and they don't accept it. It's like, dude, you look at my LinkedIn every day and you don't want to be my friend? Like, you don't want to be my friend? Like, why not? You're scared to talk to me? And the same's true for everyone in this chat. Everybody that's named in this chat, or somebody knows who you are, you've been targeted for listening to this podcast or commenting on our posts. But here we go. These kids totally identified, totally identified good cops, good careers. They come on the post that they know are being monitored, and they make themselves look like morons and give away information on those posts that could only be found in department computers. They give away posts while threatening us, while covering for the fact that our children were threatened, and they're using their own name. Who in their right mind would do that? Like I told you, I think last month we had about 1.2 million views. 67% of those views, 68%, excuse me, of those views were from returning users who are not subscribed to this podcast. You know, so I mean, who in their right mind is going to do that unless you feel comfortable enough that absolutely nothing's going to happen to you? And look, absolutely nothing happened to him.
I don't like to give Juju too much airtime, but I think it's kind of funny. Juju says no one from the upper echelon watches this podcast. That's funny. That's funny because yet I've spoken numerous times of what's going on, what was going on with my son, and then I lost my son. And I received an email from the police commissioner and some phone calls from the upper echelon sending condolences to my son. So don't tell me the upper echelon doesn't watch his show. They sure do. And it goes back to what we're saying. 67 some odd percent of our viewers are not even subscribed. To me, those totally cowards. You're watching this podcast, whether you like it or not. If you hate it or you like it, you love it, you're watching it. Why not subscribe to it? It's free. So to me, if you're not subscribed to it, but yet you're watching it, that takes more effort because you're not getting notifications when the next show is coming. You actually have to take the time out to look into the podcast. So to me, that shows that it's really some care and concern. Now, going back to what you said, John, Marlon. And the question is, why are they doing this, right? That's what's important to me in this investigation. What is the MO? You know, when we first started getting the attacks from the CRT team, I was laughing. I thought it was funny. You know, they were basically making inferences, threatening. They wanted to challenge us to a fight, tell us to come out to a bar in Wantagh. I thought it was pretty funny. I was out in Malaysia at the time. We were laughing. John and I were actually laughing hysterical about this. We were pretty tolerable. I don't think at any point would we have ever made complaints. And we just thought, wow, these guys are so stupid. They're actually putting their names out there, and they're actually challenging us to fights while they're on duty. And we were laughing, but we never thought we would make a complaint, even with all cops are walking. It was like teetering around. It was kind of deranged. Some of the stuff was on a fine line, but we were tolerable. But once all cops walk, and I say they, because I don't believe all cops are woke is just Sean Mohabir. I just think he's the face of it, and he's the one that's taking the blame for it and going down the ship. That's why we need you to speak and tell your story. I think there's a whole group of people. It involves the upper echelon. What is the MO? That's what we should all be thinking here. Our active and retired members, anyone on this chat right now, the question should be, what's the motive? Why would Sean Mohabir put his life and career on the line? Why would Sean Lisco do it? And there were others also that jumped on. We just haven't mentioned their names, that also defended all cops are woke and defended this whole situation. Why would they go on social media? The CRT team, why would they make themselves look stupid? Why would an attorney for the CRT team attack this podcast also, putting themselves out there with, why would they do that? What is the motive? And if there is no motive, if they weren't directed, let's say that, for instance, they weren't directed to do it, why did they feel so empowered and emboldened that they could actually get away with this? I know when I was a cop, same thing with Marlon and John, I'm sure many active and retired members here, you would be terrified to utilize social media in that manner. Or you were terrified to just get into a pissing match with someone that may cut you off in the street. But for these guys to be so emboldened, and just look at some of those pictures that were sent to John and myself in regards to our kids. Who would do that? Just think about that. And I don't want to get too much on a somber note. So, John, you said you're not mad. I tell you what, I'm mad and I'm pissed right now. And I'll tell you why. Because I was told by numerous people, why didn't you reach out and say you need help? What's going on with your son? Oh, we're a family. Really? How are we a family? Because people are reaching out to me, right? People I haven't spoken to in years, who know who all cops are woke is, who watch this podcast, who knew what's going on. And they tell me, I'm sorry for your loss. I send condolences. Really? My son is dead. I lost my son. But when there were threats to my son's life and there were threats to John's girls, no one stepped in and no one cared. So what kind of family is that? All of a sudden they care now. Why didn't they care before?
You know, in an honest department, somebody would have stepped in a long time ago and told them, listen, this is unprofessional behavior and we got to cut this out right now. But I think this goes back to the mentality at the top and the mentality of people like Kaz and Shell and Eric Adams himself, because they're all, in my mind, they're all getting the same behavior from Adams. You know, he set the example, he set the table, and they're all following. Okay. So the question is, like, why, what would possess Sean Mohaber to have done that in the first place? Right. I believe that, well, let's look at OTB here. Okay. Back in October of 2024, ITB got a unit citation for work they did in 2023. So, of course, Sean Mohaber's name is on there too, because back then in 2023, he was in ITB or OTB. You know, you get it, the Office of Information Technology Bureau, right? So when we go through the list of bosses in ITB and who was in charge at that time. You know, there are names that pop up there that are constantly following John, that are constantly looking at John's accounts and looking at John's LinkedIn accounts. Okay. And you dig into those people and you start wondering, hey, how close did these people work with Shell and Kaz? And how much were they committed to the agenda that Kaz and Shell had? In particular, Kaz, because Kaz is built, he's now effectively built a career on being the drone guy in the NYPD. And not only that, but Kaz has gone to other places now to give speeches about the drones and the drone implementation in the NYPD for other police departments. You know,
Kaz is spokesperson.
This drone as a first responder thing is massive. It's the whole country. All the departments are being slowly kind of indoctrinated into the usage of drones as first responders. You know, it doesn't matter what size they're from, LAPD to Seattle to like the small sheriff's department are now like on the program. And again, a lot of that comes from New York City, because as we've seen in a lot of cases, what happens here slowly trickles out to the rest of the country. And this is why that agenda is very important. So now let's go back to the unit citation in 2023. One of those names that comes up is Michael Gulanello. Okay. Now Michael Gulanello was a deputy inspector. I believe he might be running his time right now.
He's looked at my LinkedIn numerous times.
Yeah. And so he was a deputy inspector, which was the commanding officer of something called the Strategic Technology and NYC UAS Development Coordinator.
Another
UAS is unmanned aerial systems, drones. He's basically the point man within OTB for drones. Okay. And let me tell you, this guy loves Kaz. He loves them some Kaz, you know. Anytime Kaz is up there talking to the media or gives an interview in the paper, this guy is reposting it on LinkedIn, you know, and saying he can't stop gushing about Kaz and how Kaz has helped the implementation of drones in the department. Now, this is very interesting, okay, because this guy is also he seems to also have played a part in the change of the NYPD radio frequencies. We've talked about how they've now been encrypted so that the public can no longer listen to the radio frequencies. Okay, and this guy was the commanding officer of the Life Safety Systems Division, which I believe is in charge of the radios. And what else do we know happened during that time frame? By the way, right, the time frame of 2023. Well, Kaz went in and he got those new body cams that was specific to the CRT guys. Okay, So here we have 3 cases where this guy seems to have been intimately involved in these new technology programs that the NYPD's been pushing. Yeah. And all of those programs work with Chell and Kaz. You know, they're kind of like again, Kaz has built his career on the implementation of this technology in the job. And here we are seeing that he got a citation for that, and Mohabir was part of that. So my question is, did Mohabir work for this guy? Because if Mohabir worked for this guy, we see that they have a vested interest in Kaz getting his agenda accomplished. And what I personally believe is that these guys were so into it and so into that unit that anybody who is criticizing the implementation of drones and all the robots and subway scanners on the job, that, you know, which has largely failed right now, right? Anyone who's criticizing them was criticizing. Well, anyone who was criticizing the policy was criticizing them. They basically took this personal, okay, because again, they had a vested interest in this.
Yeah, screw Giuliano though. He's another skinny little white boy. He's like he's Kaz's type. He likes to drive around, you know. So Chris Arnold brings up a good point. How's the drone as the first responder going? It's been awfully quiet. Yeah, I don't know how that program's going. I haven't seen any of them respond to my 911 calls. It's weird. Well, Jack says Kaz will be appointed the director of governmental technology in Washington within a calendar year with a pay bump. I doubt it. He might be in Washington. I don't think he's going to be the director of anything, but if he is, that'll be great content. I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about drones, but I guarantee I'm more well versed in it than Kaz Daughtry. So it'll be hysterical. It'll just show that, you know, there's management problems everywhere. So let's get back to the whole IAB investigation though into this, right? Because I think it's really important before we move on, go to different news. I think it's really important to highlight exactly what happened. So, you know, the NYPD is playing games. They're like, oh, there was no crime there. Nothing happened. Oh, but you need to report this to the St. Johns County Sheriff Office, as in my case. In Eric's case, they're not telling him where he needs to report it to. They won't. You know why? Because in Eric's case, it goes back to New York City. In my case, it goes back to New York City too. But definitely in Eric's case. So
not Malaysia, John. You sure?
No, yeah, not Malaysia. They're not gonna ask Malaysia to do the investigation and then take it over once they realize that in fact the person that was making the threats was an NYPD officer engaged in these acts while at work in the confines of multiple boroughs in New York City. Sometimes on duty, sometimes off duty. So yeah, they don't want to do that, you know. So they don't send any cops to Eric's house. They only decide they're going to send cops to my house without informing me, without telling me. I would have told them no, obviously, because I know that there's nothing that the St. Johns County Sheriff could do, because they would essentially what the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau and a lot of people who claim to be cops and claim to have a lot of knowledge about the police department continuously are telling me is that, well, because you live there, the complaint goes back to you. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't. So I was like, so essentially you want, and I vocalized this. We were on the phone. We did a 3-way with one of the guys that got kicked out of IAB for covering up all the other corruption that was happening under Ed Caban and Eric Adams. You know, and then so we thought we were going to get a new investigator, and that never happened. But when we had the investigator that was just there, placed there to cover up the corruption for Caban and all of them and Adams, I said, so you want me to go to my local sheriff's office and tell them that an NYPD cop is threatening my children? He was in the confines of New York City and at work. The NYPD has identified him, won't tell me who he is, but they want you guys to conduct the investigation. And you think, I was like, and you think that that's normal to tell anyone? Never mind, tell someone who was a lieutenant on this job for 18 years and the other guy who's a lieutenant for 18 years and sit there and think that we're two morons. And I'm gonna go there. Yeah, please, could you take a report for me for yeah, because IB told me that, they won't tell me the name of the guy, but they want you to conduct the investigation for the cop that they know who it is. And yeah, I'm not doing that. I was like, I'm not doing that because that's retarded. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm not an idiot. And you're talking to two lieutenants. You're not talking to anybody else. And by the way, we didn't serve our entire career in the Internal Affairs Bureau like the people that have been investigating this case, right? But I've served enough to see how it works and to know how the intertwinings of a case happen. So I was there long enough to know that's not how an internal investigation works. And I was a cop for a long time to know that's not how a complaint works. That's not how an investigation works. And that's not how an arrest works. So I know the whole aspect of all of it. And you're sitting there and talking to us like we're an idiot. So then we get a new investigator. And, I wasn't hopeful. Eric wasn't hopeful. But maybe, who knows? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Jessica Tisch did clean up the Internal Affairs Bureau. Maybe that happened, right? Maybe that happens. She cleaned it up. It's good. So Eric goes, after 3 months we get another, special investigator from Group 1, the top tier, the number 1 group in internal affairs, the Special Investigation Unit, and it's filled with SDSs and LSAs and all this other garbage. All these people with their fancy titles, investigators, integrity, pride, all this bullshit, right? Give the guy 3 months to go over the case, and he comes back and he's telling us to follow the advice of the guy that got kicked out for covering up drugs. And so Eric's like, you didn't take a report? You didn't take a report? You didn't take a criminal report? No, you got to go. John has to go to his local sheriff. He's like, well, what about me? Where do I go? No response.
No one answered me.
No response, right? And all I do is I ask in the chat. I just go in because I see them going back and forth on the email. I wasn't even involved in the conversation. I just go back. I see the email and I ask, are you refusing to take a report for us? ? And 1 week later, on a Saturday evening, St. John's County sheriffs come rushing to my home. 15 months after the threats happened to my kids. 15 months.
It's interesting also. What you said, John, right? Yeah, right now we're civilians. We're retired from the police department, but we have almost 20 years experience each. So combined, almost 40 years experience. And we both were lieutenants, and we both were evaluated extremely high. When we had spoke to the first case investigator, his name is Richard Galvez. And just to give you a little background, Richard Galvez had worked in the 7.5 and the 7.3. Who else worked in the 7.5 and 7.3? Kenneth Daughtry, Jeffrey Madry. Again, just little inferences of connections that we see with this case. Is that a coincidence? Some may say it is. Some may say it's not. I believe Richard Galvez, who was the first case investigator, was handpicked and selected for this case. Now, we were told not to be alarmed. The person was identified behind the fake moniker, All Cops Are Woke. That person resigned from the job. So I said, okay, give us the information on how the investigation played out. What details were uncovered from the GL-15? So if anyone's listening right now, if you're active retired NYPD, you know what GL-15 is. If you're outside law enforcement, General Order 15, that's where you sit down with a tape recorder during your investigation. I'm not sure whatever terminology you use. So I asked, what information was obtained in that GL-15? What did you learn? And what did it reflect on any allegations or charges that John and I made in regards to this case? And what was I told? None of that information could be provided to us because it was a compelled statement. I said, wait a minute. What do you mean it's a compelled statement? Do you know what a compelled statement means? I said, compelled means that it's a statement made under duress. That's not what this is. This is a General Order 15. This is information that you can provide to us to keep us safe and so that you can utilize this when you file that complaint. And we've been completely stonewalled. At no point, any case investigator that we've had, and we all know active and retired police officers, we know damn well that the NYPD should have filed charges and made the arrest for aggravated harassment and notified the feds because this social media threat crosses state lines. Now, again, I've never received an answer or response where I should file the complaint. Of course, it's convenient. John is residing in Florida, and he's actually presently there, physically there. But does it even matter? What if John was not home?
I was not physically in Florida at the time I received those threats.
That's what I was just about to get to. I said you physically reside there on a constant basis.
I reside there, but I was not there.
At the time, right, that's what I'm getting to. At the time of the threats, what if, John often talks about he goes to New York. He often says on the weekend he goes places with his family in retirement. Does he have to be in St. Johns County? What if you happened to be in New York that weekend? And I think you were. I think that, ironically, I think you were. So at that point, does it make a difference now? What if I was in Texas at the time? Or what if I was an astronaut? What if I was in space at the time of those threats? Should I notify Elon Musk? This completely falls on its face. It's an epic fail. The NYPD did the investigation. The threats come from New York City. That's where it should be filed. Sean Mohabir, I'm calling for your arrest. He should be arrested.
Yeah, the thing is, this entire case could have been wrapped up in like a weekend, As soon as you guys made mention of it on social media, there should have been somebody there, and somebody at upper echelon who constantly watched the show should have taken the initiative to put the kibosh on this before it further embarrasses the department. But they didn't, And not only that, but if you look at around the same time is when Chell, he basically started going at the media and going at people on social media, and I'm looking at a post on LinkedIn where he openly talks about social media around that time, So are we to not wonder if there is a sort of a mandate coming from above, or sort of a mentality coming from above that slowly trickled down to the CRT and all the other units that work with CRT. I mean, you have the lawyer, okay, who apparently thought that way too, when he jumped on social media and started, trying to criticize the podcast. And so why wouldn't this have trickled down into OTB too? Because OTB worked with the CRT in implementation of a lot of these systems. So, but not only that, but just think of it for a second, right? Around the same time, Kaz and Chell were having basically a rally with the CRT and all these groups that work with the CRT, right? They would have these rallies where Chell would give these rah-rah speeches and let these guys know that listen, basically the city's ours. We're taking back the streets. We got your back. And so to me, when I look at that, I believe that created a kind of a bubble that these guys thought they were in, where how dare you criticize Chell and policies that you're seeing going forward? Because these chiefs are protecting us. Kaz and Chell are protecting us. We're building something great here, and for you to come criticize it is an affront to us. Okay, it's a kind of a groupthink mentality that I've said many times before. I believe this all came out post mandate. I believe the mandate itself was a massive, like a massive groupthink when you look at the job and the way the job responded to it. And when you see the behavior that followed after the mandate, it's like it's all groupthink. Groupthink. No one is thinking rationally anymore.
Well, you're right, because in some of those social media posts from the CRT team, we were told, John and I were both told, you shouldn't be criticizing the Dream Team. You shouldn't be criticizing this administration. This administration takes care of the cops, and they were defending this administration. And what were we also told, John? We were told by the CRT team, by their attorney that rides around with them, who thinks he's a cop. You'll see his picture out there. He rides as a cop.
He got fat, that kid. He got fat.
Oh, did he gain weight?
He got fat. Yeah, his slim uniform isn't looking that good on him.
He clearly wants to be a cop. But
Yeah.
what did he say? He said that they actually had a meeting talking about how this podcast criticizes the upper echelon and we shouldn't be doing that. I mean, come on. So it just shows everything you're saying is right. Why are you having a meeting about a podcast about us criticizing the upper echelon? Is it really that big of a deal?
Yeah. And this was about the same time that Kaz and Chell tried to switch the narrative to kind of equate criticism of the policy and of 1PP with anti-cop rhetoric and with criticism of the cops on the ground. Anytime they would be confronted in the media by tough questions about what they were doing, they kind of reframed the conversation to be about the boots on the ground. They would say, "Oh, the cops on the street are doing fantastic work." You know, we've commented about that before. That yes, we know cops on the boots on the ground are doing fantastic work, because one of the strengths of this department is that we get stuff done in spite of all the roadblocks, you know, in front of us. You know, like when I was a cop, that you had to like search the precinct for ink ribbon, you know, to type out a vibe check. Yeah, we were still using typewriters up until like 2011, 2012, right? So what did I do? I went and got my own typewriter so I don't have to do that. You know, that's how the job works. That's how cops work on this job. We find ways to get the job done in spite of all the roadblocks in front of us. So for him to kind of reframe the conversation to be about cops, it is clearly perception management. In fact, that's where we first started talking about perception management. Okay. So again, you see all that behavior around the same time frame as well. Are we supposed to think that's all like coincidence?
Yeah. And then the other point that we're missing. So all of these threats are going on. At that time, I was doing a lot of media, right? I was doing a lot of Newsmax. I think I was still doing Fox. I was doing a lot of mainstream media hits at that time, talking about crime in New York City, talking about woke DAs, talking about the migrant crisis, talking about any prolific incidents that happened. And every time I went on, the producers would call me. Sometimes the talent would call me, or somebody like, yo, they're calling the owner, and you know who they were? I'm not going to give up anybody's name. I'm not going to give up the talent or the producers or anything. But you know who it was? It was Shell and Kaz saying, why are you having that guy on? That guy's a racist. That guy's this. Go on 770. That guy's a racist. Racist memes. This, that, the other thing. That guy's a leftist. Hates cops. All this shit's happening, right? So all that starts happening too. And then what's happened? Then what happens? And then so I go out online and I'm pissed because I'm furious. I was like, the police commissioner's a dirtbag. He sent his criminal buddy to threaten me. The cops are threatening me. I start going crazy. My sisters are calling me like, John, are you losing your mind? I'm like, I'm not losing my mind. Like, this is what's happening. Like, I'm just calling it out. Yeah, I know. But you're making claims about the police commissioner and the mayor. I'm like, I'm not making claims about them. It's a fact. Here's the proof of it. Here it is. Tell me why this is happening, right? And what I started to say is because, you know, like all of the media was interested in it because they believe me. I've proven myself to be a person of integrity for the last 40-something years. Everyone knows that if I say something, I believe it. Maybe I am losing my mind, but everyone starts calling me and asking me. And I said, listen, I get it. Your Redditors don't want to talk about it. It's too inconvenient to say that the entire upper echelon of the NYPD is systemically corrupted and the mayor's office is corrupted. I get it. It's hard for you guys to understand. But guess what? They're coming for you next. And what happened? And it's still happening. They are abusing the New York media. They go out online. They try to do somewhat of a more professional smear campaign without the death threats, without sending the known criminals, but with using social media and coming out online. And then what happens? The Office of Inspector General does an entire investigation into it. They never look into the claims that myself or Eric made, ever, right? They just completely disbar them. But they say that all of the posts that were coming out from the NYPD were completely unprofessional and unbecoming of police officers. But they ignore all of the claims that myself and Eric made. Why? Because it was criminal what was happening. It was absolutely a complete... If you literally calculated the amount of money the department has spent to come after myself, Eric, and this podcast, it's in the tens of millions. I mean, there were 300 people, GO15, We're not looking for you. We're trying to get this retired lieutenant and showing my Instagram account. How much money did that cost taxpayers? How much money for nothing? A frivolous allegation about myself. Never mind all the time spent, all the background checks, all the checks being done by Intel, all this nonsense that's been going on, all of the attacks and all of that. So it all started with the Finest Unfiltered, the entire thing, their entire unprofessional media smear campaign. Until today, I was watching this week how Chris Sommerfeld of the Daily News, he hones in on the administration. He hones in on what they're doing. He points out the truth. He doesn't write any lies. He doesn't say anything. He's barred from the mayor's press office because Eric Adams doesn't believe in free speech. Right, so he bars Chris Sommerfeld, a top-tier reporter in the Daily News, a great reporter in the Daily News, probably the number one reporter in the Daily News, Chris Sommerfeld. His articles gets millions and millions and millions of views each month. Why? Because he reports the truth. He talks about what's going on. He goes after you if you're right. He goes after you if you're left. He goes after you if you're doing something that's newsworthy. He does his job. He's a reporter, what you would expect a reporter to do. This administration has ignored him for months, not allowed him to ask questions. And when he tried to, they kicked him out. And Kayla Mamalek and Jack, I'm going to beat you up a little here. Kayla Mamalek and Fabian Levy, his two little cronies, his two little ministers of propaganda, are basically smearing their own colleagues, calling them liars and telling them that never happened and Chris is out of line and all that. And you know, they're his two propaganda pieces. So I heard the piece you did saying Kayla Mamalek's a good employee. She's a good employee, but again, loyal to a fault because she's another one following the social media, looking at every post, said that the claims that me and Eric made are frivolous and lies and misinformation. So no, she might be a good employee for Eric Adams, but she's not a good person. And she has a great hand, her and Fabian Levy, in controlling the narrative for Eric Adams. Maybe she's doing a good job with that. But for actually reporting the truth and helping and creating public safety and creating open dialogue and protecting First Amendment speech, she's in direct opposition to that. So, I mean, it all started and stemmed from here. And that's just something that I want to highlight is like, it wasn't just us making those claims. Like we told them exactly, it's going to happen to you. And sure as the sun will shine tomorrow, it happened to them. And then they were like, everyone's like, I can't believe this is happening. And I was like, oh, really? You can't? You can't? We told you, you watched it. You said nothing.
Again, good morning, chat. Like, share, and subscribe. We're about an hour and a half into it. It's your Friday roundtable. Stephen S. leaves a great comment here. Stephen S., good morning. By the way, a special thank you to Stephen S., who did show up to my son's service, who's been a great friend to the podcast. So Stephen says, smearing is the tactic of scoundrels. Cowards try to character assassinate. Absolutely. So initially, on the onset of this podcast, and I think until now, everyone knows expressively, we've been so adamant as far as supporting the boots on the ground. Do we give a fair assessment? Are sometimes our views negative towards some of the actions of the cops when it's right? Absolutely. And I think that's fair. We give a fair assessment. If a cop is acting inappropriately, if a cop is not using proper force or tactics, we'll make a proper assessment. And we're not always going to champion for every cop. For the most part, we support the boots on the ground. And if they do make a mistake, we give a proper assessment to make them better. And now, with that being said, the attacks that we started to receive on social media, initially I thought, wow, here's a bunch of egomaniacs trying, the CRT team. I believe, and John, you and I both spoke about this, I believe that they thought they were doing the right thing, right? They were being loyal to their leadership that's taking care of them right now. And I'm sure John Schell and Kaz Daughtry are taking care of them in the now, in the present. Go out there, do all these vehicle pursuits. We'll take the city back. But again, I used to tell my guys, your leadership is a guest. You're a permanent resident because eventually they move on with their careers, whether they move up into another location or they retire. When the investigations start to come down, you're left with that investigation by yourself, and they're going to be gone. They're not going to be to help you. So I understand. I'm not saying I would never do it, but I understand. I believe they think they were doing the right thing. But the problem is it came from a bad place. But I think at the time we thought, wow, they're protecting their egos. But when we realize it's more than that. It's not just protecting egos. The reason why they want to silence this podcast is because we talk about the appearance of impropriety with this entire administration, the potential corruption in this administration. John and I were way ahead of the curveball months before the Fed started to apprehend phones. John and I were talking about the appearance of impropriety, private contracts, the amount of money that this administration was spending. Tim Pearson's case was just settled. We just talked about cases that are going to be settled and probably meet civil liability because of this protest settlement. Look at these cases that have been settled that have nothing to do with their geographical employment. Tim Pearson was represented for sexual harassment cases that has nothing to do with his job. So it's not just about ego. I always say egos over everything. It's very important to them. But ultimately, this really comes down to this podcast need to be silenced by this administration, stemming all the way up to Eric Adams, because we talk about corruption. Marlon, John, myself, Sal Greco, we talk about corruption on this podcast, which is why they want us to be silenced. That's the real silver lining behind this. And that's, I believe, the ultimate MO. Now, I talk about the MO specifically for All Cops Are Woke, for Sean Lisco, and they're small potatoes when it comes to this, let's be honest. But the entire MO is to silence this podcast because we have given a perspective and a lens. Right now we have the Finest Unfiltered, New York's Finest Return Unfiltered podcast, Sal Greco, the executive perspective, where we're given a lens and an insight to policing that has never been heard in a manner. And we've exposed and detailed and gave a descriptive, detailed information on the corruption and the potential corruption that we see right now. And that's a silver lining to this.
Yeah, they've never had a podcast like this. They've never had, I look at a lot of the other podcasts on the other networks, and I see a lot of them are afraid to approach certain subjects, and the job has never had
Every subject.
Yeah,
they only talk about the past. That is it.
Yeah. They don't want to touch certain topics because they're afraid it's going to ruin their opportunities, or they're going to get criticized by other guys on the job, and the job has never had people who will point out their mistakes while it's happening right now, and that jeopardized the agenda that they had, and it was a problem for them that the media, the Post and the Daily News and all these reporters are also watching here, and they can get ideas to then go write articles about. Okay, that's the worst thing that could happen to the job. Now they have guys who understand the job, who worked in the job, who are connected to people still working on the job, and the reporters are watching us, and they're getting clues about what's happening right now and could go write an article right now. So you see. And if you look at all the money that's been flowing through the city and into those same contracts, you can understand why it was of the utmost importance for the job to kind of delegitimize the podcast. Because, before we've gone on, we've talked about people like the Skydio CEO even coming on and following John. It's because all the money involved. They don't want criticizing because they don't want public scrutiny of all they're doing. And look at Eric Adams' behavior right now. He's just telling you right now. He's telling you right now how he's setting the table right now and telling you how his other administrators and his other commissioners should treat the media.
Yeah, dude, it's just. It's disgusting, dude. Honestly, when I think about it, it's just so frustrating. And then to watch the media cry about like, oh, they called me a name on social media, or they did this, and I'm like, oh yeah, did they threaten your kids? Did they send known criminals after you? Did they prop up fake criminal investigations against you? No, oh, they didn't do that. Oh wow. And then I don't blame the individual reporters. I just think that the media is captured. The media is completely captured. It is what it is. And when you see independent podcasts that are popular, and on the come up like this podcast is, I mean, we're probably, honestly, we're probably about an eighth of where we would have been if it wasn't for the constant scrutiny that the platform gets. I mean, on every level. You know what I mean? As far as with the news media is afraid of us. I mean, there was a time in New York media, I was in Fox News, Newsmax, the Post, the Daily News every day, right? And then when all this stuff happened, it just went down. Why? Did the things I'm saying not become accurate? No. Everything I said was right on cue. Everything. So it's like, when you watch it, you're like, the information doesn't get out of here. And Mikey G keeps asking in the chat, is anything going to happen? And then he goes on further to say that nothing is going to happen. And I'm going to say, I totally agree with you, dude. I totally agree with you. But you know what? Does that mean that we shouldn't say what the hell's going on? Does that mean we should just cower in the corner? And believe me, I've gotten calls throughout this whole time. People are like, oh, just give it up. Just go away. They'll leave you alone. And I'm like, will they? I don't know that they will. And honestly, it's a great platform. People there are guys and girls that love this show, that they feel very attached to it. And I mean, how many emails of myself, Eric, Marlon, Sal, I'm sure Ron and Rob are getting them now too, from guys and girls in the police department, retired from the police department, that love the show. They're like, listen, we love what you guys are doing. You got us through our 20 years. You get me through my career now. It's good to hear people that actually care about us. And, I don't think that because nothing's happening, we shouldn't tell the truth. We're not doing anything wrong. We're not spreading misinformation like Juju said. I mean, anything we've ever gotten wrong, we went back and said, hey, we got this wrong. This was not accurate. And we corrected the record. So, I mean, I think that, I just think, again, the New York media captured, the entire nation's media is completely captured. We'll get into that. Last segment on All Cops Are Woke, right? I want to highlight something. I just want to, so the cops were sent to my house, right? They were sent to my house. Who sent them to my house, right? That was the question I had. Why did you send cops to my house that I didn't request for an investigation that they can't handle, for a crime that they can't prosecute? Why did you send those cops to my house on a Saturday night without informing me? So we got the 911 tape. So here's the audio of the top tier Group 1. Let's hear how proficient and competent IB Group 1 is. Let's hear who they pick to put in charge of this crucial investigation that told all of you that the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, including the chief of internal affairs, is corrupted and associating with known criminals. Who told you that before they were all removed out of the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau and some removed from IAB? Who told you that there was shenanigans going on in Chief Jeffrey Madry office? Who told you that there was criminality happening and shenanigans happening in Ed Caban's office? Who told you that the overtime, right? Let's see who they put in charge of this vital investigation. Let's see who runs Group 1 and who their investigators are. Let's start to listen to Sergeant Travis Rutherford as he sends St. Johns County sheriffs to my home without knowing if I was there 15 months after threats were made. Let's hear it.
Teletype, Maddie.
Hey, good evening. I'm Sergeant Rutherford. I'm calling New York City Police Department.
What's up?
Hey, I wanted to see if I can make a referral complaint over to you guys. I have one of our former employees who live down in your jurisdiction, and I wanted to refer a complaint on their behalf.
Okay.
Tell me, what do you? Well, first I will give you the address to see if you guys do cover that area.
Go ahead with it.
It's
And what was the complaint?
basically they informed us that they received threatening posts via Instagram. So someone sent them photos of a firearm and this.
I'm going to stop it right there. I just want you to listen to this. Someone Someone sent them threatening messages. Not an NYPD cop, not an NYPD sergeant, someone, not someone who's a potential threat to the sheriffs or to me, not someone that potentially owns firearms, someone, right? I just want to hone in on that real quick. Keep listening.
They stated that they're coming down to Florida to harm them and their family.
And you're an ex-coworker of this subject?
No. I am from New York City Police Department.
No, he's not an ex-coworker. He doesn't work in the New York City Police Department.
Internal Affairs. This person worked. He's retired from our agency.
Okay. Good job listening, Travis. You're doing a great job. Your listening skills are phenomenal. He's probably great in the GO. He's probably awesome.
Before you go any further, it's important to know, friends and listeners, why you listen to this, ask yourself, why does he sound so sheepish? Travis Rutherford, you're a piece of shit. He sounds so sheepish because he knows what he's doing is wrong right now. He's being extremely vague, and you can hear in his voice how awkward and uncomfortable it is, and he's completely omitting information. The fact that it's not real time, saying that it's someone, and then saying it's someone, from the police department, because he knows what he's doing wrong. You can hear in his voice how sheepish he sounds. Hassan, you're absolutely right. He's a bum. You're a bum, because there's no doubt in my mind Travis Rutherford didn't take it upon himself in this investigation to make this call. He was definitely directed to. So sheepish. Listen to him. Keep going further.
Everybody's very curious about my shirt today. This is another Sergio Tacchini, Pat. All right, another war for you, bro. Yankee colors. All right.
It does look like male lingerie.
That's it. This is called a resort shirt. All right. I just walk around Florida with my buttons open.
Do you have underwear on?
That's it.
Do you have underwear on?
Sorry. I swear there was like 15 comments about my shirt. Oh, you wear pajamas?
It's been all day.
Yeah.
I just gotta say, how terrible at his job is Travis. I mean, I've contacted many police departments outside of New York City. I've never had to go through 911 to reach them. Like what are you doing? Yeah, there are many places you can call. What about the Fusion Center in Florida? What are you doing? You could have reached their headquarters just by calling the Fusion Center. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He called 911 deliberately. This here is it's so intentional, and that's why he knows it. You hear in his voice how sheepish and how awkward he sounds, because he knows what he's doing is wrong. He knows this is damn right wrong, especially to call 911. If you really thought Florida should investigate this case, this is not in real time. You could have called their detective squad. You could have contacted someone. It's not exactly a busy department like New York, but to call 911, you can hear it in his voice. It's like, that's why he's saying someone. He just wants to get this call over with because he knows what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah. Someone told him, and he went and he was like, "Oh, let me just get it done somehow. Let me just get it done and over with."
But keep in mind, he probably has SDS, or maybe he's getting it. This is New York's finest right here.
Like slight Down syndrome? What do you mean SDS?
He's got
Sergeant Detective Squad. Yeah. That's right. When you get it, when you go to some inspector who worked in internal affairs his entire career, never went out on the street, who's about this big, who I could probably flick across the street. I could probably just go like this, and he'll go across the street. And you just go, what do I do here? And they give you a checklist of things to do. Here, do this, and this. And then 15 months later, he comes up with a genius idea.
Okay.
Let's refer the complaint and not the complainant. I think that's what those guys do in the New York City Police Department, right? But it fails on your face when you already conducted the investigation and you know that it's a New York City police officer, right? Inspector, right? So yeah, I'm talking about the new CO of Group 1, by the way, in case you want to know. I don't want to give you a name because I don't want anyone to really care who you are, but
by the way, they're still terrible at their job. You're not going to hear about it today, but we're going to get to that another story involving Group 1. and they're terrible at their job still.
So all right, let's get back to it. So all right, so competence, you hear breathing through the phone. You know why this person has SDS. Right? You know why. You hear the competence. He says nothing that this guy's a cop. He goes on. He wants to refer the complaint. He's not saying that they conducted an investigation. He's not saying anything they found. Let's hear how much he investigated. Let's hear what he's got to say. Hold on. Here we go.
And they pretty much have notified us via like a complaint to us. I'm from their internal affairs up in New York City.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Great job, Travis.
Did they say what the threats were?
It's photos and it's one of the threats specific because I have them. I'm looking at it right now.
Give me 1 second. I have radio trap. Give me 1 second.
He's looking at it right now. Like, you need to look at it to remember that these threats, he didn't describe exactly what are on these pictures. They're just some photos.
He sounds very well versed in the case, though. I'm looking at it right now. Good job, Travis. Good job. He's doing his one worksheet a week on the case. I notified 15 months later. Here you go. I
want to see that DD5. Call 911.
I'm not even mad. I like the only retribution I want is I just want to be able to read his case. I just want to read his case closings prior to them going through all their checks. And I want to read the worksheets that he does in this case. Because I guarantee, in all of his cases, actually, because I guarantee they're a work of art, but not in a good way. I guarantee it. All right. I think she steps away for a second. Hold on. I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Travis is busy looking at the case right now.
Like, what is this?
Threats on Instagram, and it was pictures. And what was
Yeah, it's a
direct
picture, and so for example, one was a photo of a rifle, and it stated that we are after your home now. They have like an abbreviation. It's ACAW, and he stated that ACAW is after your home now. And we know who the person were during our investigation here. We identified the person who made those posts.
Again, nothing that this person's a cop, nothing that this person has access to firearms, nothing that this person was under their jurisdiction. Again, to Marlon's point, you want to refer an investigation that you did. Why? I don't know. Because ultimately, it's a crime that goes back to New York City to the DA's office. So you want the St. Johns County Sheriff Office to run your investigation and tell you how you need to arrest people and go to the Brooklyn and the Manhattan DA in order to prosecute? That's what you need, Travis? So, but like, let's say you want to do that. You're trying to relay case info to the detective squad over 911. There's nothing. You don't relay a case closing, case notes. You're describing photos over the phone to 911. Like, honestly, like, I would expect, like, when I heard the call, I was like, this guy can't be a sergeant in the New York City Police Department. This is like, sounds like a lazy squad sergeant telling his cadet, yo, do me a favor, notify Ohio PD XYZ.
Yeah.
And he's calling like, Ohio. I don't know, my boy. I don't know what's going on.
John,
I don't know. Like, am I wrong? Like,
I kind of wonder, like, maybe he's that stupid. Maybe they say, listen, contact the police department in Florida, and he couldn't find the phone numbers. Just call 911. I can't. You have to assume they'd be a little smarter than that. Like, I call the local precinct in St. Johns County. Yeah, I'll call 911. They do it in New York, so I might as well do it here.
Listen, I think we're being too hard on Travis. You know, I'm looking at his collars there. He has 34 collars.
Made sick. Well, to be fair, though, that's 3 times the amount of the greatest cop that ever worked in the New York City Police Department, Eric Leroy Adams. So he has 3 times the amount. So going by that bar, I see why he's a sergeant detective squad. It must have been amazing, all of those collars that a sergeant ordered him to take. I mean, it must have been amazing. 34 sergeant detective squad. Yeah.
KB's got to get him promoted. 4/4/2024 SDS.
I mean, dude, and here's the other thing. Like, all right, screw his collars. Screw his collars. All right. Everyone's like, collars don't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. I don't know how long he was a cop. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he's doing other thing. Maybe it doesn't matter. Does this guy sound like he deserves to be promoted as a sergeant? Does he even sound like a sergeant? Does he sound like he even knows what he's talking about or what he's doing? Who told you to call 911, you moron?
That's what I'm saying.
Are you a moron? Like at 8:30 at night on a Saturday?
Well, I tell you what, easy to just complete moron. Well, that's what I'm saying. You listen to him. It sounds so sheepish to me. It's like, it's someone like he just wants to get through it because he knows he's doing wrong, or he's just that much of an idiot. I think it's both.
It's both, dude. It's him being ordered to do it, and it's also that he's an incompetent loser. Like he sounds like a cadet on the phone. Does this sound like a sergeant of police to you? Does this sound like someone who's well versed in their job? He's like,
Well, and I bet you and I could get St. Johns County on the phone in 2 seconds. We wouldn't have to call 911. We'd find the phone number.
Yeah.
You would never do that, dude. You'd be like, oh, no. Is there a detective squad I could call in the morning? You would never do that. You would never do what he's doing.
Right.
No one in their right mind, as slightly competent and knows police work, would, 8:30 on a Saturday night, I'm on the phone with a 911 operator trying to refer a complaint that I already investigated that involves threats. Nobody's doing that. You're gonna be like, let me speak to a squad guy, or let me speak to somebody, let me speak to a cop. I don't want to speak to a 911 operator.
I love the case though. He's like, yeah, we investigated fully. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. What were the threats? All right. Let's hear. I mean, this is a great piece of work. Yeah. This is unbelievable. Great job, Travis. Again, it's not a knock on you. The system failed you, but don't worry. You're 3 times more collars than the greatest police officer ever, Eric Leroy Adams.
And a second post, for example, showed like a photo with a woman and a child, and stated like, hopefully nothing happens to your family. Kids are precious. And then like another one is of a map of the United States, and it shows that basically like a route, and it says we're coming to Florida to see you.
What is the victim's name?
The victim first name is John, common spelling. Last name is Macari, Macari.
Great job, Travis.
And is he going to be at his residence to meet with us for a report?
Yes, for all intents and purposes, I believe he's because he lives down there now.
For all intents and purposes.
Is he going to be home? Yeah, for all intents and purposes, because I believe, because he lives down there now. Travis, I'm not always home, dude. You sent cops to my house. Thankfully, I was home. That could have just been my wife and my kids there. Thankfully, I was home, and to my neighbors, it just looked like that I'm a skell dirtbag that beats my wife, and the cops had to come to my house. Thankfully, and by the way, I live in a gated community, so anyone that comes to my door, I'm notified ahead of time about, unless what? It's the cops. So I was completely startled with flashlights outside my house and banging on my door. So thanks a lot, Travis.
But hold on a minute, John. John, hold on. We're all laughing here, but I've been saying this since the beginning of this, of you being swatted, right? How did he know you're going to be home? I mean, this is 8:30 Saturday night, and we know he watches the podcast. IB watches the podcast, so does the upper echelon. And quite often, John, you're like, I went away this weekend. I went to St. Pete's. I went here. I went there. That's my question. It's Saturday night. How did he know you're going to be home? Because you sound pretty confident. It sounds like to send them now. That's a question I have. How did he know you're home?
I totally disagree with that. He sounded confident.
Not confident the whole thing. Just on that part.
I cannot. second that he sounded confident or competent. I'm sorry. I just can't.
Definitely not confident. Definitely not confident. I'm saying with that point.
I know. I'm just joking.
But how do you know you're gonna be home? Honestly, unless it's just like we said with Marlon, like he just didn't know the phone number to call 911 and just take it. He said, maybe he didn't think you're gonna send him right then.
Here's my other question, right? Just think about this logically, right? 911 is for imminent emergencies. Okay, you're wasting 911's time, right? She could be answering a call from a civilian who's like getting robbed right now, right? You couldn't even think to just ask, hey, can I get the number to headquarters? Do you have the number to headquarters next to you? I mean, it's just mind-boggling that you got a guy with at the time he had I'm looking at 13 years on. That it's mind-boggling that someone with 13 years on who's a boss is doing this without thinking. That in fact, I wonder what St. John's Sheriff's Office was thinking when they heard that. They must have been like, "This is the NYPD."
Oh, definitely.
I can't believe this is.
They were. Yeah. You could tell. You could tell. They must have been so unimpressed. But even the 911 person on the phone, you can tell she's like, "What? Who?" She's asking the right question, like who, what, where, when, why, and he's not giving this. He's not really describing it. She's lost. And is it a member of the NYPD? Is it not? At this point, it seems she still doesn't know.
No, I mean, well, he doesn't know. He doesn't even tell her, like, why is IAB calling me? Like, why is the Internal Affairs Bureau for the NYPD referring this complaint? We know who this guy is. All right. I mean, I'm not blaming the 911 operator, but the obvious next question is, oh, was this guy a cop that was threatening him? Like, why are you investigating it? I mean, let's just leave that out so that they take the complaint, And then my other thing is like what Marlon's saying, like, it's so true. Like, you hear her taking 911 calls on the side, like, hold on one second, I'll be right back, right? She's taking other 911 calls. You elicited a false, unwanted response, 911 response to my house, and you misconstrued improper information about that I was going to be home. And about the call itself. So it made the St. Johns County Sheriffs rush to my house because they want to help me. They're like, oh, this retired guy's getting threats. And Kayla Mamalek, Eric Adams, Jessica Tisch, and the rest of the New York City Police Department saw nothing wrong with this. And so, like, we're making fun of him right now, and you hear it. It's incompetence. It's unconfidence. I mean, the guy's honestly, he should be like, asking you what you want at Dunkin' Donuts. Like, do you want milk and sugar in it? And he ain't going to get that right. I promise you. Him and Adams maybe could be a shift manager. It's going to be the worst one shift, but maybe just due to his experience. But like, there's been no correction because of it either. Kayla Memelek said I was a liar and this was misinformation. And the NYPD and the girl in DCPI that runs it now said, oh no, this was handled properly. We were just referring the complaint 15 months later completely improperly to 911 and eliciting a false response. I mean, this is a crime, what he did. It's a literal crime. Honestly, if it wasn't the NYPD, I mean, you see what happens in the jurisdictions in Florida, there would have been a big problem. Like that sheriff's office would have been pissed. They were pissed when they heard the story, when they got to my house, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. They're like, wait, you did not know we were coming here? I'm like, does it look like I know I'm coming here? I'm naked. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I was like, no, I didn't know you were coming. I just got home from the beach.
That's right. That's why I'm saying it was, like I said, he's either a complete moron or, he was sheepish because he knows what he's doing wrong, or it's both. And if it doesn't, it's either what Maul and I were saying, joking around, that he just doesn't know how to call the police department, calls 911, or he was directed to call 911 for that reason, to cause alarm to you. Why call 911 on a Saturday night? That, to me, that's the most alarming time. Most likely you would not be home, but since you are home at that time, relaxing with your family, why call 911 at that time? And especially they watch the podcast, they know that you're home in the morning. Why not call in the morning time? Doesn't have to be Travis to call. It could be anybody. A complete moron. This was intentional. They wanted to elicit a response from you. To me, that's alarming. Maybe it's a little far-fetched, but who knows? Cops are responding. you're a retired member of service, you have firearms, it could cause a problem. It could be a disaster.
Now, for those of you who are watching this, right? Though, and those of you on the job who are thinking, "Oh, this is just pictures," right? Let me tell you, it's not just pictures. We have an entire bureau of cops and detectives who investigate threats like this all the time. I told you before I was in Leeds, and Leeds gets a lot of these cases where somebody on the internet posts a picture of a firearm next to a politician's name, next to a somebody of prominency in the community, right? We investigate these incidents all the time, and we look at it and we try and determine, is this legit? Was he just trolling? But in either case, a case is built on it, okay? And a case is brought to a conclusion, okay? And those cases go all the way to the top because they're read out by the chiefs and 1PP. So if you're thinking this is this shouldn't have been taken seriously, you're completely wrong on this, okay? And if that cop had done that to a politician or anybody else besides John and Eric, that case would have been brought to its conclusion, okay? But the job just didn't take this seriously, and there's a reason why it didn't take it seriously, because they didn't want stones to be unturned.
100%. And Popeye Dammit says, in small departments, when you call precincts, other than 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, it goes to dispatches in the 911 system. Exactly. And this moron, who's in the top tier, the number one investigative group in the New York City Police Department, who has the top pay sergeant at SDS, he's a sergeant detective squad, doesn't realize that he's on the phone with a 911 operator. And this is how he's referring the complaint. It's 100%. You're 100% correct. But he doesn't realize he's on the phone with 911. He thinks he's like talking to he thinks he's talking to the girl in the 124 room. Like, he has no idea what's happening. Like, dude, you're on the phone with 911, you moron, and you're not even giving any of the information properly. Is he home? Oh, for all intensive purposes. Yeah, he lives there now. How do you know I wasn't in New York? You moron.
What is this, a training exercise for intents and purposes? I mean, it's like it's a training
for all intensive purposes, yeah. Yeah. All right. For all intensive purposes, let's finish. Let's see what other. Let's see why he made SDS. Let's hear it, because I hear the competence in you. And Travis, I'm not mad at you, by the way, but you're a moron. I'm sorry. You don't deserve SDS, and your CO is a moron too, and whoever your lieutenant is too, and I'm sure I know them too. I'm sorry. Anybody involved that touched this, you know what I want to say, but I'm not going to say it because we already get shadow banned enough.
She's typing away all that great information Travis provided.
Travis is still reading the case notes.
His DD5 right now is call 911.
Yes. 1 minute.
A minute. Let me get my stuff together while I pretend I care about this case.
First name is...
He's looking for the cop's first name. He's had this case for 3 months. She's like, what's the guy's name? She's typing the information. He's like, hold on 1 second. And now he's looking.
What a moron.
Guy is, you don't know this information right off the bat. I could have made this phone call. I could look at a case note that I know nothing about and make this phone call without ever peering back down at the thing. Maybe I don't know the spelling, but this guy doesn't even know the name.
He's still looking.
First name will be Sean, SHAWN, and last name will be Mohabir. It's MOHABIR.
He could read. Congratulations, Travis.
It took him a while though. He had to divide up the
Right,
first
and
name and the last name.
What was your name again, and a good
My
contact
name-
number for you guys?
Sure. My rank, I'm a sergeant. First name is Travis, TRAVIS. And my last name is Rutherford, RUTHER, F as in Frank, ORD as in David. And my phone number here, it's
We'll give you the number to IB if you need it. I don't know why they blocked that out. I'll give you Travis' first direct line as well.
Yeah, I would say just to handle with him because we're just making it on his behalf.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate the information. We do have a unit en route now, and if anything were to change, just give us a call back, okay?
And your name.
So that's the point that I want to highlight right there, right? So that's the key point right there. Now, he gives the guy's name. He never says that he was a cop. He never says that he has access to firearms. He never relays any of the information. She says he doesn't know if I'm home. She says, I'm sending a unit right now. He doesn't say, oh, wait, I'm not sure that if he's home or not. Don't rush. This was 15 months ago. He makes it sound like it's happened just now. He makes it sound like it happened just now, doesn't tell the 911 operator it's a cop, and he elicits a false response to 911. Now, whether he does it intentionally or because he's just obviously highly incompetent, or maybe it's just both. He's highly incompetent and he did that intentionally. It really doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, he endangered those cops' lives. He endangered my family's life. He endangered my life, and he elicited a false 911 response. I mean, he committed a crime. It doesn't matter. And he never says anything. Never says this guy was a cop. Never says, oh, don't have them rush there. Right? I mean, that would have been the first thing I would have said, like, oh, this happened 15 months ago. I just want to refer it. Should I call back tomorrow? Should I call back maybe on Monday? Right? No. Travis doesn't even know he's on the phone with 911. Special investigation unit. And guess what? He didn't get in trouble for this. There was no after action report for this. There was nothing. Oh, and I called Group 1 immediately after that. I'm sorry, I didn't call Group 1 because they were too cowardly to pick up the phone. I called the IB Command Center, and I called the Internal Affairs IB Command Center, and they were like, what do you want us to do? I was like, I want to file a complaint on Sergeant Travis Rutherford right now for harassment, for eliciting a false 911 response, for sending cops to my home without even knowing I'm there. I want to file a complaint against Travis Rutherford. I want someone else to handle this investigation immediately. I've never been contacted by anybody from the NYPD again, not anyone in Group 1. And it's necessary, as per their own rules, that they're supposed to contact me within 72 hours. And nobody contacted me. That is the NYPD today. A bunch of incompetent, unconfident cowards, complete cowards.
Listen, there's no doubt Travis Rutherford, and he's not the only one, right? Travis Rutherford happens to be the last investigator in this case that we actually had contact with. But all the investigators that have been part of this allegation and the charges alleged by John and myself have been completely cowards, have stonewalled us, and have refused to take a report. The investigation was done by the NYPD. Sean Mohabir is identified. He was a member of the service at the time of these threats, and every reason to believe, every indication that he was on duty, and every indication he did not act alone. So why wouldn't the NYPD want to disclose and uncover and expose what's going on with this investigation to eradicate any psychological issues with the NYPD? Are we to believe that there's just a bunch of psychos in the NYPD running around? Is that what we're supposed to believe? That there's no MO, we just have a bunch of psychos? Let's go back to Travis. You can hear his demeanor on the phone. He's completely sheepish. He's awkward. And the fact that he's omitting so much information is what makes it dangerous. That he's not providing the information detail. He doesn't disclose the fact that these threats should be taken very serious, that this is from a member of the service who was armed, who may be armed at this point. He did not get fired or terminated from the police department. He resigned, which means he retired, which is every indication he could be a law enforcement officer as we speak in another jurisdiction. He could be a firearm carrying person. And he does not describe what those posts are and the actual threats. He doesn't explain that these posts are threats. And he pretends he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't even know what the guy's name is. I don't know if he's a complete retard or just a complete idiot, or he's doing that on purpose because what he knows is doing wrong. I think it's both. I think he's a complete idiot. I think he's a complete
But
idiot.
what about the time frame too, dude? You don't say like, "Oh, this was 15 months ago."
Well, that's my point. The fact that he's omitting the information that's what makes it dangerous, because he doesn't say, "Listen, take your time. There's no reason to have an immediate response. These threats came about 15 months ago. We're reporting it now as our investigation unfolds." That's not what he's saying. He didn't say, "Hey, it should have been." Listen, if you really want to call 911, I don't think that's necessary. It should have been, "I'm Sergeant Travis Rutherford from the New York City Police Department. I work for Internal Affairs. We have a retired member of the service who lives in your county, who was threatened by a former member of the service who was armed, who may be armed now, and that's why these threats are serious." He doesn't say that. And that this threats started January of 2024. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say it because what he knows is doing wrong. He knows that he's wrong. That's why he sounds so sheepish. Yes, he's a complete idiot. He's an idiot because he's willing to do it. None of us would have done it. Anyway. I gotta let me see.
AB says, "Give him a break. He did an excellent job of describing a photo over the phone. That's very hard to do." Yeah,
KB, he should have been honest.
Dude, I don't know, bro. I don't know.
If you guys who are watching this, right? If you're an instructor in the academy, you should spend like an hour and talk to these recruits, right? Let them know that if you got to call another police department, you're the NYPD. You're not some small town department, right? When you call another department, you're the NYPD. They assume this is something bad. This is something imminent. We got to take action. And they're giving you the benefit of the doubt because you're the NYPD. So first of all, you better be on your P's and Q's when you call them with the information, right? Second of all, if it's not imminent, right, you better let them know it's not imminent because they're already pulling out all the stops because you're NYPD and you're calling them, right?
You're right.
So you can't call them and tell them something is happening and make it seem like it's imminent, because then it's you're causing a lot of resources to be used and a lot of commotion that's needless. Okay, so
well, I'm not laughing at you, but this is hysterical because KB says, "I'm sure he faxed the photo too." I can only say, "Hold on, the fax is coming through."
Bro,
he definitely faxed those photos 100%.
They should have give this to the cadet over there. You know, I'm sure the cadet would have done a better job.
Just think about how dumb you have to be. And so this kid, and Jessica, this is my point to you. This kid was an investigator in the command center in IB, an investigator, right? This is the perfect example of why nobody should ever rise the ranks in IAB. You shouldn't leave for a year or two and come back. You shouldn't be a cop there and then a detective and then a sergeant and then a lieutenant and then a captain and then make yourself all the way up to the Group 1 CO. Like, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. But this is the level of cop you have working in internal affairs. I'm sorry. I've said it before on here. Everyone in the New York City Police Department should work a stint in the Internal Affairs Bureau. Everybody. Maybe you bring a guy back as a chief later on, but you never bring a guy back in those other ranks. And anyone that continuously wants to go back there, I'm sorry, no. Like, you need to be a well-rounded officer. You need to be well-rounded in investigations and handling criminal investigations. You need to know what actually happens out there on the street as well to conduct proper investigations against your own staff. I think IB is a great resource, but it's just totally mishandled, and it's the fault of guys like this, dude. You know, like, he was an investigator. He's SDS. He'll make lieutenant. He'll leave for a couple of months. He'll come back. He'll be a lieutenant there. He'll get LSA there or LSD. He'll go, and he'll go that whole route. Same one as the Group 1 CO currently. And Pat Donahue says Group 25 is better. Yeah, Group 25 is better investigators. I'll agree with that. I know those guys also. But you want to laugh, though? You want to laugh about Group 25? I'll tell you a story about Group 25. There was a lieutenant on our case, and I can't remember his name right now. He was one of the 2 or 3 lieutenants that we had assigned to our case.
Miles?
Miles. What was his name? Miles Kenefick? Nah. Miles. Whatever his name was. I don't remember the guy's name. Miles something. So anyway, he gets booted out of Group 1 after he gets our case. He's like, we're ready to tell you who all cops are woke is. He gets booted out of Group 1 that night. And then and so like this whole thing comes down. Group 1's gone. He's in Group 25 right now. Why? Why is he now? And I thought he got booted out. I thought Jessica Tisch cleaned up the Internal Affairs Bureau. I thought Group 1 wasn't doing the right thing. I thought the chief of internal affairs wasn't doing the right thing. And to even laugh further is like knowing Sal Greco's case. They sent a picture of Sal Greco and Roger Stone. Someone sent a picture of Sal Greco and Roger Stone to the Internal Affairs Bureau. Said that Sal Greco is trying to overthrow the United States government. Right? I'm sorry to laugh, but like this is what happened. This is what happened. They said they sent a picture saying Sal Greco is trying to overthrow the United States government. And IAB goes on a 16-month witch hunt against Sal Greco. They illegally subpoena all of his phone documents. They do all this stuff, criminal association. They charge him with uncompensated security because they couldn't prove that he was ever compensated. It's a charge that doesn't exist, and it doesn't even appear on any of his charges because they called it something else, right? So they charged him with all this crazy stuff. And Sal Greco, in his deposition, they bring up the Group 25 lieutenant who investigated this case, and they say, Sal Greco says, how could you fire me for criminal association when you can't even define it? And here's the police commissioner and the chief of internal affairs and people in Group 1 and all these other people associating with a known criminal in this photo. You know what the lieutenant says? Well, we can't just say someone's criminal association based upon a photo. You fired the guy based upon a photo. You went on a 16-month witch hunt over a photo. But when I get a photo about other people, no. What? Is it because what? You don't like Italians? You don't like Catholics? What is it? Or is it just, it's only if you're in with the in crowd? You know, so Group 25, are they better investigators? Maybe. I don't really know. Because again, the entire upper echelon of the NYPD is systemically corrupt. And what the F is anybody in the Internal Affairs Bureau doing about it? Nothing. You know what they're doing? They're sending St. Johns County sheriffs to my house 15 months later. This is the level of investigator they have. It's not hard to be a better investigator than this. I had cadets that'll be a better investigator than Group 1 right now, than Travis Rutherford. I have cadets that would be. I know PAAs I would trust way more, and that's not a knock on PAAs, but they should be making the money this idiot's making.
This is why I'll defend what I always say. I always say that the upper echelon, and when I say this, I say the chiefs, every chief on this job is compromised. We know that all the chiefs talk. Majority of the chiefs, if not all of them, watch this podcast. And we've been expressive and adamant about this case with All Cops Are Woke. And not one chief has ever spoken about it. Not one ever notified Internal Affairs. Not one condemned the actions of All Cops Are Woke or anyone that's behind it. And this is why I say that they're all compromised. So it's interesting also, right? When John called me that night and said the police responded for All Cops Are Woke, I was like, what? This is 15 months ago. They came now. So we decided at that point, we'd both call IAB. So I called Internal Affairs and said, I want Travis Rutherford recused from this case. I want to make a complaint against him. I want a new investigator. And John, when was that? Because since that date, we have not been contacted, not through email, not through phone. There hasn't been any communication other than getting a log number. We were supposed to be contacted within a couple of days and immediately have some rapport and some information provided. We just been completely stonewalled. So to your question earlier, Mikey G says, where's this going? Probably nowhere. But that doesn't mean we should just give up, right? There's a difference between being a nice guy and a good guy. A nice guy wants everything smooth, but a good guy wants to do what's right, even if there's opposition. So we're not going to give up. I want to find out what's going on with this. Because let's be honest. If they could do this to 2 retired lieutenants, what would they do to just 2 average civilians? What if they were just 2 average civilians that were so critical of the police department? They had an insight to what's going on with the NYPD, and they read, and they had a lot of knowledge, or maybe they were being fed information by 2 retired lieutenants. What would happen to them? We have an understanding of silver lining. We're not intimidated by the police department. Listen, I wasn't in IAB. I didn't do GOs, but I was on the other end of GO 15s. I had, because of CCRB, after COVID, because during COVID they weren't doing the GO 15s. I had 8 GO 15s in one day. I spent my entire day. So I've been on the other side, and I know the conversation, what kind of questions should be asked. Travis Rutherford is a bum. He sounds like a complete idiot. He sounds unprofessional, and this is why I get these crazy looks when I go throughout the country. People like, when I tell people I was NYPD, like, oh, wow, what's going on in that city? No longer are we the goat of policing. No longer do we have that stigma of professionalism, of being that big brother. Like you said, Marlon, when he called, it should have been a big deal. Like, wow, NYPD. And they took it serious, right? But we're losing that ability to have that appearance of being the NYPD. We're not to go to policing anymore. And it's people like Travis Rutherford and the upper echelon that have to protect their egos in this corruption that's going on that just completely tainted the police department. And no longer is it something that we should be proud of, that it resembles what we served. The police department that we did is completely different what's going on right now. Did it have its faults? Yes. But the overwhelming majority of it, it was good at the core.
But how happy would you be if you got called into a GO and you see Travis Rutherford sit at the other end of the table? You're like, oh, all right, just gonna easy day.
he doesn't even. He's not even
group one, and you see Travis Rutherford. Yeah,
I don't know, John. It could be the opposite way too, because like I said, I had a GO 15 in 28 when I told you, like, when I was a rookie, I tried to get an apartment. The guy, I gave him my ID. He photocopied the ID and he gave it to his son to throw in the windshield for 3 years. IAB called me in. I remember the lieutenant in IAB telling me, "Oh, you're getting something for this. There's no way you're not getting anything for this." And I was like, I didn't do anything. And had I not insisted, I would have gotten a hit for that, And the thing is, when you have incompetency at that level, they that doesn't properly do their job. Think how many cops they just said, you know what, it's 2 or 3 days. All right, I'll just take the hit, for pure incompetency like that.
90% of the time.
Yeah.
Probably more. Probably like 97% of the time, guys are signing off on discipline that they didn't deserve, that they did absolutely nothing wrong, because they either just want to get promoted, get transferred, or they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And they're like, whatever.
Yep. Meanwhile, the guys who do things like steal time, like Gulanavo did in 2015, get promoted. It's not a big deal if you got the right connections. None of it matters. So it's endemic of the problems in the job.
Well, I see the investigation is going really well. I mean, he doesn't even know the guy's. He barely knows the guy's name. He doesn't know what the pictures are. And that's not the only picture. There was several pictures. There was several posts of threatening messages from all cops. Well, and he could barely describe a picture with a rifle. I mean, like KB said, that's a great description. Just a complete idiot. What a bum. But again, I know. I heard it. You heard it. We all analyze behavior. He knew what he was doing was wrong. That's why he was so sheepish, and that's why he was omitting information. He just wanted to get through with it. And what was the most important thing? Can I get your name? He wanted her name at the end just to check a box, do his DD5s, right? Anybody outside the NYPD, DD5 is just a folder. It's part of casework, whatever you refer to it as. So he's doing his casework. He just wants to sign it off. That's his investigation. We called 911. We referred it to Florida.
Yeah. This guy, you got to wonder about his supervisors too, because if I did that in Leeds, my sergeant would have ripped me. Like, what do you mean you referred it to 911? Really? You referred a case to 911? The operator at 911? That there was no way I could have gotten away with that. How is he able to do it?
But and that's my point. Like, let's just say it was done completely unintentionally. There's been not even a re-instruction from it. They think this is how they should operate, dude. Like, that's my whole point in this. Like, I personally think it was done intentionally and purposely, not on Travis Rutherford's part. He was ordered to do it. That's how I feel. But like, Travis Rutherford's the guy walking to a bagel store, great bagel store. Go to it's the best bagels you're gonna get in Florida, right? I go there. I'm like, yeah, can I get a bacon, lettuce, tomato? The girl's like, looks at me. She goes, one at a time, please. I was like, forget about it. And I just walked out. That's Travis Rutherford. That's Travis Rutherford. That's group one. That's what they are. That's your CO. Like there's been no reinstruction, Marlon. We've been going 2.5 hours on this. Just a couple of things I want to hone in. I know it's Friday show, but I don't want to be here till 3:00 in the afternoon either. So what was the other thing you wanted to talk about with group one? And then we'll hit 2 national topics. What were you talking about with that? Because I got something else in my head. That's why.
You wanted to talk about something else with group one, right, Marlon? Did you want to point something out?
No, we'll talk about that. I'm still working on that. You know, I'm waiting for something to come down, and then we're gonna hit it. You know.
But you know what's funny? I gotta laugh, right, Marlon? Think about it, right? If you were in Leeds right now and you were just a complete idiot, and that was a 911 call you make, you probably get great because this guy's got promoted. You know, we got to laugh at it, but he knows damn well, and we know that he's watching this right now. Patrick Donahue says Eric Dim has great stamina. So do you, brother. We can do this 4 hours.
He's always checking guys' stamina.
I don't know. That sounds kind of funny. Well, listen, he knows what he did is wrong. He's watching this right now. And if he doesn't have any embarrassment or shame by watching this and hearing himself on that 911 call, that's even more questions. He sounds ridiculous. KB said, silly Eric, you only get grade for driving the Chief.
Yeah.
Daughtry.
Yeah. So Rutherford, get out there, do some real investigations first. Then maybe if you want to go back and be an investigator, go to a squad or something, bro. Because honestly, that was pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. You endanger my kids' lives. You're a complete moron. Not mad about you. We could talk about it. Don't worry. But it's just it is what it is. When you retire, you come on, you tell us about it. We're gonna play the 911. We're gonna play the 911 tape though again. We're gonna see what we want to get your inside scoop of like what you were thinking and your investigative mind as it was happening. So yeah, great job. So all right, let's hit 2 national topics and then hit the road. This one is both national and citywide. We've been telling you since January that apparently Tom Homan and Donald Trump have been failing at the migrant crisis because Eric Adams just gave a no-bid contract in January over and over again. I mean, you could go to my X. I've been saying since January, probably twice a week or 3 times a week, I've been saying that New York City gave a no-bid contract to the New York City Hotel Owners Association. You guys, if you were listening to this, you heard it on there too. $1 billion to the hotels to house illegal aliens. $1 billion contract that flows through all of Trump's presidency. It could be renewed for up to 3 years. Why are we doing that if Eric Adams solved the migrant crisis? He already testified in front of Congress that he spent $9 billion of your tax money on illegals, which is 20 times more than the amount of every other sanctuary city. Now we're approaching about $11 billion. And I thought that we were going to have a government of efficiency. I thought we were going to have a government of not corruption. I thought we were going to have a city where illegal aliens and public safety threats were being removed and these frivolous contracts were no longer going to happen. But apparently in New York City, that's not the case. Apparently in New York City, we're still spending $1 billion to house illegal aliens while Eric Adams, Kayla Mamalek, and Fabian Levy and the New York Post and everybody else are going out there and telling you, oh, this hotel is shutting down. That hotel is shutting down. Yeah, but they're opening up hotels as they shut them down and rerouting funds. So it's a complete joke. But the thing I want to ask both of you is why is the New York Post all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they've been the most pro-Eric Adams paper ever since Jessica Tisch got appointed. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. You haven't heard one thing bad about Eric Adams. Why today? I've been reporting on this 3 times a week since January. Everybody's been ignoring this. Why today is this front page paper?
Mario?
All right, I'll go. That's a very good question. Why now?
I thought you wanted to jump on the real estate stuff.
Yeah, well, that is a part of it. But the question is, let's go on the background of it, right? I've said before that the reason why the city is funneling money for the shelters is it's really a backdoor bailout of New York City real estate, commercial real estate. Now, I've said this before, that there's a massive devaluation happening right now in commercial real estate. You see a lot of properties are being sold 70% off. And not only that, but there's a refinance wall approaching, which means that a lot of these commercial properties, their mortgages are usually 10, 15 years. And what happens is they refinance at that point. Problem is, they're refinancing at a higher rate right now. Their revenues are down, and a lot of them aren't even going to be able to refinance. So a lot of these properties are going to go into default. So what Eric Adams is actually doing is keeping those properties afloat, because a lot of the real estate runs the city, right? Nearly 50% of tax revenue comes from these guys. And a lot of these guys also fund the campaigns of these politicians, including like Eric Adams. So they have a lot of weight behind it. So, but also a lot of the city's pension funds are tied to securities that are like the commercial mortgage securities. So they're backed by it. So the city does not want the values to go down, because it starts cascading problems. The city, Wall Street, and by the way, the federal government to an extent. So that's the background behind why Eric Adams is doing that. And they don't care about the migrants. They really don't. It's about the big money behind it. Okay. But the question right now is, why is this happening now? Okay. And keep in mind, the election is just a couple months away. And like John says, told me offline, that it looks like Cuomo is going to be the nominee for the Democrat Party. So isn't that curious that now that it looks like Cuomo is going to be the front runner, that the Post is now feels they could talk about this now?
You know, it's interesting when we look at this whole migrant crisis and this whole network of the immigration problem in New York City, right? It's, I think, basically created under Eric Adams and this administration, its own economic market. And it's a huge market in New York City, which is every reason and every indication why Donald Trump's Department of Justice is not taking action against Eric Adams, because New York City has always been a major economy in this entire world. But now this is its own economy, right? We have numerous organizations like Catholic Charities and different ones that are making money off these shelters, right? Then you mentioned also, you mentioned securities, and I know you're talking about bonds and stocks, but we have actual security firms that are making big money by working at these shelters. And then we also have CEOs or hotel managers. They're making money also from these real estate contracts, for these shelter contracts. So this is a big business. Everyone involved, right? These organizations, security companies. There's a big market here where everyone's making money off these private contracts with this migrant crisis under Eric Adams. But I think that's a good point. Now that Cuomo's the front runner with this, now they can speak on it. And I think that's what you talk about often, Marlon, right? When you talk about real estate, I think that's really what this comes down to. This is its own real estate model. And when we look at this, there's so many pieces involved. It's a huge economy with this migrant crisis, which is why they pretend they want to have a deep, deport criminals from New York City, but they want this shelter, this shelter economy to continue. I mean, like I said, all these charity companies, these security companies, the hotel developers, they're making money. I mean, you can even see it in the South Bronx, right? The area that they call Sobro. That area, as they've been trying to develop, there's big money being poured into there when you cross the 3rd Avenue Bridge. And a lot of that, if they start building shelters there also, is part of this real estate market. This is huge. I mean, there's a lot of people making money on this. I don't think they want this to go away at all.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay. If I may, there's an entire industrial complex around us. Okay, everybody in the real estate is eating, from the top to even the managers and the security firms, which work hand in hand with real estate. And don't forget the retired chiefs. A lot of them, they retire straight into the security industrial complex pipeline. So they're all eating. But not just that, but all the restaurants in that vicinity, now get the cheap labor. And what do we see happening lately? Trump, a couple of days ago, he was getting pressured by farmers and people,
hotel owners,
exactly,
the Trump organization,
exactly.
the ones who are getting the biggest piece of that $100 million with that $1 billion contract.
Yep. Everybody's getting a little piece of this.
Well, you're right. But this goes full circle, right? Because they're donating these shelter organizations. They're donating money to politicians, which hence Eric Adams' administration. So this whole thing, like I said, this whole market's full circle. All these private companies, security firms are all making money. And you're right. It's important for the upper echelon to be influential in this because it's a pathway for them to have another prestige after they leave the police department. That's why I say this is its own economy. It's its own market. Sorry to interrupt you, Mom.
Exactly. And that leads me to the point. Why today is this front cover of the paper? Right? Listen, there are only a few people that loved de Blasio. They owned hotels in New York City. They call him an idiot now, but they made a lot of money with Bill de Blasio. A lot of money. And that's why they were the only people who donated to Bill de Blasio's presidential campaign. Not because they thought he could win, but it was payback. It was, I got to get mine. It was the crumbs, right? We remember that, right? I got to get mine. Everybody's eating off these contracts. I got to get my crumbs too. That's where that comes from, right? Those same people love Eric Adams. Those same people control the media. Why today is this front cover of the paper when 3 months ago, actually 6 months ago, I was yelling it from the mountaintops and everyone, including Bootlicker News, who's saying that he reported it, were telling me I'm lying. Right? Like, why today is now the New York Post doing this when they've been so pro Adams, so pro everything? Why today is this front cover of the paper? And for me personally, I think because the numbers are coming in, and I think what we're seeing is Andrew Cuomo is going to win the Democratic nominee. He's going to win it. And I think they know that Eric Adams has zero shot now. And hey, let's get on the Cuomo bandwagon and play nice with the next mayor. And that's totally my opinion. And again, it's just more proof that the media is captured. That's how I look at it. I think that if Mondani was going to win, you never see this article because you haven't seen it for 6 months. They're not going to trash. They're not going to trash Eric Adams. They're just not.
To your point about the media being captured, John, I put up on Twitter a recent Obama was at a recent forum, right? I think this is relevant. This is 100% relevant to the media. In it, Obama is talking about social media, and he explicitly says, we want diversity of opinion. We don't want diversity of facts. It will require some regulatory constraints. And here's why. The like social media and podcasts like this are a problem to these people because the media is so captured, right? The fourth estate, which is the regular media, is so captured right now that the fifth estate, which is the citizen journalists, the citizen media, has been stepping up. And with social media, we have the ability to broadcast our voices, and that's dangerous to them. And we're seeing it in all these examples. We talked earlier about Sean Mohabir and what the department's doing and the agenda there. And now you see Eric Adams' recent behavior. Now we're looking at this piece and why the Post for months did not talk about this, and now they're doing it now. And this is why Obama talks about that.
Yeah. It's logic saying, oh, it was Friday. They bury things on Friday. They haven't reported this in 6 months. There was no reason for them to break the story. They just the entire mainstream media has ignored this for 6 months. There's no reason that this comes out other than they're turning on Eric Adams. That's what I see. Other than they're like, yeah, sorry, Jessica Tisch. We know your family donates a lot of money, but Cuomo's the next mayor. So, but yeah. And then so we get a $1 billion contract. And then here's this, the guy that's telling us that Tom Homan's out there, he's deporting them, he's deporting people with their families. I'm doing that. Everything he's doing. And then listen to what Trump has to say.
What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
So the guy that told you he's going to deport everyone, the guy that says there's going to be mass deportations, the Trump organization directly benefits from $1 billion contract that Eric Adams, a no bid contract, gives to house illegals in New York City. And he comes up and he tells you, oh, yeah, we're going to deport everybody, just not if they work in the hotel or in farms or in the leisure industry. And, oh, that's convenient. Who benefits from that? Oh, you do. Your family does. Oh, your friends do. Oh, the elite, right? Oh, so it's okay to hire cheap labor then. And we're not going to deport those people, but we'll deport everybody else. I mean, the policy's all over the place. He retracted from these statements, by the way, because they were everybody was like, what are you even talking about? Everyone, including his base, was like, what are you talking about? And so he retracted from these statements, but he's telling you exactly how they're operating. If you're here illegally, they're going to come after you. If you work for the elites who love cheap labor, you're fine. Don't worry about it. So I recommend if you're in this country illegally, go work for a hotel or leisure industry, not some mom and pop pizzeria, because they'll shut them down and deport you and your family for absolutely no reason. So, I mean, it's a complete joke. And by the way, do I believe in that people should be here illegally? I don't. Because guess what happens if you stay over when you go to Mexico or you go to Bahamas or you go anywhere else, and anywhere in the world or Greece or anyone else, they're going to come and find you and lock you up, and then they're going to deport you, right? And that's what should happen in America. We should know what's happening here. But apparently, we only need to know when you work. If you're here working for hotels, though, you're fine. You're safe. You're not a criminal.
You're actually spot on with that. When I spent time in Asia, I'll never forget when I was in Thailand. And you get your visa and you have the date that the visa expires, they give you paperwork that lets you know that if for every day that you spend past the expiration, you have to pay a certain amount. It's a fine, and they'll hold you to that. It's not that they're gonna let it go and just completely waive it. They will hunt you down and they will find you. There's no doubt about it. I agree, and it goes back to what we're saying here, right? Marlon, you and I talk about this all the time. This whole thing is its own real estate market, right? This is its own economy, and it's not just New York City; it's nationwide. So it's convenient to play this game where we have a crisis, we have illegal military-age males crossing this country. We need to protect the border. We need to have these people deported, but there's certain people that we need to work in hotels and the leisure business, right? The tourism business, because everyone makes money in this real estate economy, this market, where organizations are and charities are getting money. The shelters, the people that run the shelters are making money. And then what happens? It runs full circle. These people donate to the politicians. So like you said, Marlon, I think you said everyone's eating on it. It's a complete circle. So it's convenient. Sometimes they're illegal military age males, and sometimes they're an economic apparatus that elevates everyone, and everyone, especially these politicians, wants to be involved because they get the kickbacks from these private organizations. They get the donations because these politicians vote to keep them in. They want these sanctuary cities so these shelters make money. I think, John, I think you're spot on. I think the media is under siege. It's sad to see. I mean, we see it especially with this administration. This media is under siege. It's candid and it panders to Eric Adams in this administration. And I'm sure Remember, we said this on New York's Finest and Unfiltered podcast, and on the Finest and Filtered Network, we talk about this all the time. If Eric Adams is not reelected, I'm sure we will see a different angle, a different perspective, and a different lens from the New York media than we did now. So think back how the New York media, their relationship with Eric Adams and the NYPD, and going forward, if Eric Adams is not reelected, what will that relationship look like? And that's why I agree with Mullen. I saw your post with Obama, and I watch it. I agree. I think that this long-form platforms, podcasting with real people, gives out real information, which is what they don't want, right? They said, right, you can give out numerous opinions, but not different facts, because what's factual now in this country? When it comes, it's become a belief. If you watch CNN, they'll give you a certain perspective of factual news. If you watch Fox, they'll give you a different perspective, and it's up to you what you believe in. It's not a matter of is it truth or not. It's almost like a religion. Do you believe in Judaism? Do you believe in Catholicism? Well, do you believe in MSNBC? Do you believe in Fox? And I think that's what it comes down to. It's what you believe in and what they're selling you. And what happens is real people like us who give the truth and give the information, they can't combat that. And especially, it's not just sound bites. We give it a long platform and a different perspective and a different angle that people have never heard before. And that's why the media, the reporters watch podcasts like this and get information and eat off of it, because it's real information.
And Mullen, before you go, I just want to play this because this is just another point about the hypocrisy. You know, Brad Lander interfered in the arrest, completely interfered in the arrest of an ICE agent, right? Put his hands on an ICE agent, tried to interfere from a lawful arrest happening. He was arrested. His charges were immediately dropped. He was walked out. Roz Barker, same thing. Charges dropped. Yet the day after Lander's charges are dropped, Tom Homan goes on Fox News. And this is what he says.
I'll send the message I've been sending from day one. Protest all you want, hate us all you want, but you can't cross that line. When you knowingly impede an ICE officer, when you put hands on an ICE officer, you will be prosecuted. For 4 years, all we heard, no one's above the law. Well, either are they. I'll send the message.
So, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, yeah, no, apparently Brad Lander's above the law. He impeded in an arrest. He put his hands on an ICE agent, and he wasn't prosecuted. The charges were dropped. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I really don't. I'm sick of seeing the guy on TV because it sounds like all bullshit to me. Like I'm so sick of all of it. It's like it's a complete utter joke. And then the other thing that came out is you know, we were demonized in 2022, bro. In 2022, I started telling everybody they're coming after retiree healthcare. 2022. Misinformation, blah, 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 blah. 2023, while Eric's on, we do the same podcast again. We have Marianne Pizzatola on again. She come on one by herself with me. Then when Eric joins, she comes on about a year later. We do it again. Unions all put out letters same day after the thing. Oh, yeah, no, those guys are spreading misinformation. They don't know what they're talking about, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's going after retiree healthcare. New York City Retirees Organization wins to stop Eric Adams from taking away retiree healthcare. People that are Medicaid eligible, people that are 65 or over, or disabled, people in their most vulnerable years, city workers, they're putting them into a Medicare Advantage plan with less healthcare, where the cost of their prescriptions could go up, not capped, and the cost of their healthcare itself could go up, not capped, right? And we were liars, we were this, we were that. What comes out yesterday? Guess what? You're going into a Medicare Advantage plan. And the unions, not saying a word.
Yeah, you guys who are retired and watching us right now, you really should be calling your unions and putting pressure on them, because it doesn't seem like they've got they're even paying attention to all of this, you know. But a lot of this is I've said it before, it's Dutch disease, you know. New York and America has been winning so long that it's created like a class of elitists who are arrogant, and there's so much hubris that they're addicted to doing the easy thing instead of doing the hard thing for the future. They're addicted to like short-term thinking instead of long-term thinking. And we're seeing this all play out now as things come to a head with things like the money. We talked about commercial real estate happening. We're talking about the healthcare now and the health of the city and its finances. Instead of doing what should be done for the future health of the city, all we're seeing is short-term thinking. Short-term thinking, kicking the can down the road, and the problem is that these things are all coming to a head, and there needs to be somebody in there who's thinking long-term. And the problem for New York is that New York has been winning so long that everyone's still thinking that you're winning. Well, you're not. I saw a piece by CNBC last night where Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, was talking. And so basically Citadel, who used to be headquartered in Chicago, moved their headquarters to South Florida. They're now in West Palm Beach, I believe, right? They moved down there. And no, they're actually in Miami. They moved down there. And he was talking about how he sees more energy in a city like Miami than he sees in cities like Chicago and New York. And he was talking about how young people are there. And that's the thing. You see, these older people thinking that New York has been winning, and you don't realize that we're not. And you have to wake up. And these people just don't want to confront the situation, and they don't want to do what they should be doing. They want to stick to the easy right way and keep perpetuating things that we've been losing. And again, you're seeing the costs right now with the healthcare. And I think it's going to continue, and it's going to get worse as time goes on. So before you go, I said before, the union sold out the unborn already, right? The next step is to sell out the retirees, because who else is going to be left? Especially as they need new cops, they can't continue selling out the unborn, right? So who's left? The people who've already done their time and retired.
That actually solidifies and is significant what John and I have been talking about since the inception of this podcast. We have been saying that they're going after healthcare, especially in retirement, right? And they're finding ways to cut costs. And I think there's going to be other ways to cut costs and attack the retirement, right? It's almost like a bookend. Let's get the unborn and let's get the retirement, and the guys that are active, kind of leave them alone, because they don't see the long game. You said the long game and the short game. And I didn't see the long game either. And I'm sure Marlon, John, I'm sure you didn't see the long game either. When you get on the job, you're young, you're in your early 20s, your health is good. You don't think about your own mortality. You don't think about, about supporting a family. And these are just things you don't think about in your 20s. I would say maybe there's some outliers, but for the most people, I thought I was immortal, right? I never had any, I could fall, rip my own arm off, and it would heal the next day. You don't think about these things as you get older. You realize how important medical is in your life. And we're all planning to become retired. We should spend as much time in retirement as possible, right? That should be the goal, the golden ticket. Get to retirement and enjoy as many years as possible with that pension. And if we're losing those benefits on the medical, it really hurts a retirement, especially when you have a stagnant income and you're not receiving different opportunities to make income unless you have passive income and good investments. So this is a major problem. I do think it's a bookend. I think they're hitting the unborn and they're hitting the retirement. And we said it. We said, be careful with these contracts and ask questions. How do these contracts affect you now? How does it affect you when you retire? What could you be paying? And I can tell you this, having a son that fought cancer for almost a year and a half, it's a scary battle, even with insurance, especially the insurance that we have. If you want to travel like myself, good luck, because if you have, like GHI or Emblem Health, because it's cost effective, outside New York and New Jersey, good luck. Even in Florida, I don't think you could have many doctors that utilize it because they don't pay much. You could do out-of-network expenses, but let's say there's a procedure and it's $500, in LA or somewhere else, and GHI Emblem Health will offer to pay $16. Well, guess what? That rest of that money has to come from your pocket. So these are things that you have to think about. If you're young and you watch this podcast, you probably don't think about it much. And I get it. You shouldn't, right? Enjoy your life. But somewhere you have to start thinking about your own mortality, and when you get older, about your own health. And these things are important, very cost effective or ineffective.
Well, but the other thing is this, right? Like, so they sold out the unborn to the point that there is no morale amongst the job. The benefits aren't that good. So guys are just like, you know what? Screw it. I'll go work for less pay and less benefits because the benefits I have suck. Right. So they're like, all right, we can't do that no more because we can't recruit and retain. So they're like, oh, so we'll go after the retirees, right? Easy. And they're most vulnerable, right? And the unions are completely complicit in this. So Eric Adams, this has been his mission from day one. Day one. And by the way, the New York Post cheered him on for this, saying he was going to save the city hundreds of millions of dollars each month. The New York Post cheered him on when that put on. That was an article I shared in 22. I forget the month in 22, but early on in his administration. And I said they're coming. I said they're coming for retirees, but they're coming for you next. You active guys. And so, you know, Pat Donahue says it here. Word around 26 Thomas Street is that the DEA is considering drastic cuts to retiree benefits, optical, dental, prescription. That's not just exclusive of the DEA. That's the LBA, that's the PBA, that's the CEA, that's the SBA. They're all doing the same thing, right? And now they're giving away to the city through bargaining chips your healthcare, retiree healthcare, which was the bargaining chip for your contracts, right? And I said the raise you get is going to cost you way more money. You actually didn't get a raise. You actually gave away your entire salary because in 20 years, you're not going to be able to afford healthcare, right? Like I said, I vested, I was paying, I forget exactly, but I was paying upwards of $24,000 a year for healthcare. $24,000 a year. It's a lot of money coming out of your pocket, you know? And so, and that's what we're looking at right now is like they're taking away from the retirees. Yeah, that's fine and dandy. But what nobody's talking about again, and we're going to get labeled misinformation again, is that they're coming after your healthcare now, active guys. When we did the podcast with Maria Pizzatola the second time, when Eric was on, she said, New York currently has an RFP for your main healthcare, GHI, all that. Request for proposal. Guess what? That's coming to fruition now. Now your health benefits, your hospital benefits, your ambulance benefits, your doctor benefits, your prescription benefits, guess what? That's all being negotiated with less healthcare now and going to cost you more money. And again, we'll be told that we're doing misinformation, this, that, and the other thing. And in 3 years, I guarantee you this, your healthcare is going to change. The same way that it's happening to retirees. And by the way, everyone's like, I spoke to so many people 3 years ago that were like, what do I care about 65-year-olds? I'm like, because hopefully you live to 65, dude. And if you do, you're going to be going to the doctor a lot. And more than hopefully you're not, but more than likely you'll be on some type of medicine. The amount of guys that are on medicine now and are 45, I mean, you shouldn't be, but you are. It is what it is. I mean, to think what the healthcare costs are now, what's it going to be in 20 years? What's it going to be in 30 years? You know, and the price of all of those goods are going to go up. So, I mean, it's such a stupid way of thinking that I'm selling out my retiree benefits. But my point in all of it is this. Your union heads are old guys. They're old fucks. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I cursed a couple times on here. But they're old bastards. I'm sorry. But, like, they're old guys, right? And their thing is, why would I do something that's going to harm me? And you know what? That's a great question. Why would you do something that's going to harm you? Why would the union heads all stay silent about giving away their retiree healthcare and giving away active guys healthcare? Why would they all stay silent about it? I'm telling you, I don't have any proof of it, but there is something very nefarious. There is some type of deal that these union heads have for themselves and their families that the rest of you guys in that unit, I don't know if they're retiring and they're still collecting their double salary the entire time. I don't know if they're retiring and the union's paying for their healthcare costs. There is something that is happening with these union heads because that specific question that they raise themselves needs to be answered. Why would you sell away your own retirement and healthcare? Why would you sell away your own healthcare and retirement? Why would you do that? There is something nefarious there. I'm telling you, I don't know anything yet. I haven't found anything yet, but when I do, I'm going to expose it and I'm looking.
If I may, John, I'll tell you what it is.
Sure.
These guys, they retire from the job and they go into the security industrial complex pipeline. So it doesn't matter to them because they're going to be making like 6 figures doing something else on Wall Street, connected to Wall Street. So they've made a network of connected politicians and connected people in Wall Street that they can go to afterwards. It doesn't matter if they got to pay more in healthcare. Don't matter. They'll be making $300K in doing security for some firm afterwards. Like,
yeah, if we got to pay $3K in healthcare, who cares, right? If I got to pay $3K a month.
Yeah, look at Shea. I mean, he's not in the union, but I'm saying you look at Shea, you look at these chiefs, Shea's making close to $500,000 in Wall Street. You don't
and you know what? They probably pay his healthcare. That's a great point. They get these jobs that they pay the healthcare for them, and they're not worried about it.
Yeah.
I think Marlon is. Before I even say that, I just want to say shout out to Class A311. Thank you so much for being a friend to the podcast. Coffee and Donuts, $9.99 says another great show. Marlon, I think you're spot on. I think that it goes back to what I've been saying a long time. I've been saying on this podcast. The reason why we have these chiefs, these old male, pale and stale, the white guys that don't speak out about the atrocities, the appearance of impropriety, is because there's 2 reasons. One, they paved the way for their offspring so that they have an illustrious career with the NYPD. But the other reason is exactly what you're talking about, is they have avenues for other prestigious jobs. They have, which is why John Shell is electioneering himself, and John Shell is selling himself for News magazines, other avenues, because they're not concerned about healthcare. You're right. It's not a big deal. You know, I looked into, just to give people an idea of how costly it is. When my son was going through cancer and I was getting these astronomical bills, I said, let me look into other plans that are better nationwide. One of them was Aetna and Cigna. Those are great plans. You can use them anywhere. But in order to use Aetna or Cigna, you have to get it for the entire family. So you can't just change the plan for one person. It has to be the entire family. And it was about $2,300 per person for a month. So, I mean, John, yours was expensive, but it was actually pretty reasonable compared to. So this is even being employed with the NYPD and being retired just to get Aetna. Cigna was even more, but Aetna was about $2,300 a person, and you have to do it for the entire family. So if you're making a pension of $25,000 a month, which some of these upper echelon chiefs are receiving when they retire close to 63 years old, and they get a prestigious job making $500,000 a year, and along with these jobs that they get all kinds of amenities and benefits and all kinds of stipends and bonuses. They don't need they can pay $10,000, $15,000 a month for an entire family for the best medical. It doesn't affect them. It affects general population, the average person, yes. So I think, Marlon, you're spot on. I agree with you. There's no doubt about it. And again, that's why these older chiefs don't speak out. They have to clear the way for their offspring, and then the prestigious jobs for themselves. And that's why they all get along to go along to get along, because it's all self-serving.
Yeah, and if I may, about the legacy part, all their kids are hooked up on the job. You know, their kids are set for life. You know, they have such huge networks, right? Especially in we talked about this before. Kaz's kid is already a second grader walking in the door, you know, when that time frame comes. So they're not going to say anything. They're not going to do anything to change it because they're setting up their own families and their own offspring to have the world, you know? So sorry for you regular guys over there.
Yeah. So, we'll definitely touch on the healthcare more probably on Monday. I definitely want to touch on the Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz interview. I got a lot of stuff this week about that. I'm an anti-Semite, that I hate Trump, that I'm a down low Harris voter, all this crazy stuff, because I said, wow, I didn't realize Iran was our enemy, and I didn't realize that we were going to attack them until Israel did. You know, and I think the Tucker Carlson interview highlighted a major problem. And by the way, I've said numerous times, I think that Tucker Carlson's a smug idiot. I've said numerous times, I think that Ted Cruz is a smug idiot. But I did say, I think that they're both sharp. I think they're both sharp guys. I've heard Ted Cruz. I've watched Ted Cruz. I've met Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a sharp guy. When I watched that interview, I don't think he was unprepared. I think he just got caught with his pants down. I think that like he was exposed and he couldn't say what he needed to say. That was an unbelievable interview. I mean, I think we could do a 3-hour episode just on what Ted Cruz was saying and the questions Tucker Carlson was asking. And I had made a statement that it looks like that we're following Netanyahu's lead, and that's basically what we are doing. And Ted Cruz kind of admitted to that in the interview, where he said, he said that Iran's tried to kill Trump. So Tucker Carlson said, so then why aren't we going after Iran? I would support that then. If you're telling me that they tried to kill Trump, our president, I support military action against their president. And so do I. But Tucker Carlson highlighted the point. He said, but you don't believe that because you don't support military action against Iran. And I'm just asking questions. And because you ask questions in this country, the right has now told you that they're woke. They're just as woke as the purple hair on the left. If you ask a question about anything on the right, you're an anti-Semite or you hate Trump or you have Trump derangement syndrome. If you ask a question about DEI or Drag Story Hour or anything on the left, you're a racist or a homophobe or you hate immigrants. You know, I mean, and that's what we're seeing is that like there's a lot of people who are woke and don't even know it, dude. You had to see my phone the next day. It was disgusting. Don't I dare ever criticize the commander-in-chief. We don't criticize the commander-in-chief in this country. I'm like, you never criticize Biden? What are you talking about? You criticize Biden every day. What the hell are you talking about? I was like, so you don't want me to hold Trump? I'm not allowed to criticize Trump? Like, crazy. Great interview. I honestly think that was probably the best thing I've seen in probably the best thing I've ever seen on the news ever.
You know, that interview was amazing. So back to what you said about Ted Cruz and Tucker being sharp. I agree. I read a good majority of a book written by Ted Cruz called Justice Corrupted. I never got a chance to finish it, but it's interesting because in that book, he talks a lot about how politicians get corrupted, the system. And here it sounded like he was corrupted. And that's why it sounded like someone who's so sharp in that interview came off as weak and unintelligent, because to me, he knew that he was hiding the real facts and what's really going on. They left out a lot of information. It was a lot of like circling around, a lot of drama in that discussion. You know, and it's kind of centralizing this, right? Talking about, well, you know, they believe Israel is the nation in the Bible, and then when Tucker asked about, you know, do you know the population of Iran? Something that he didn't know, like things that he should definitely know. Again, for a sharp guy, there's no doubt in my mind that he knows these questions, but he doesn't want to get deeper into the questions and talk about what's really going on. And like you said, if there was an attack on Trump, we'd all be for it. Give us the details and the information. But just to go all out because we're following Israel is dangerous and it's scary. Martin, you and I were talking about this, right? It's another proxy war. We have been fighting proxy wars forever. We fought with the Chinese in Korea. That was another proxy war. There was a lot of Chinese that were killed in the Korean War that were just running at the Americans unarmed. We were killing China. That's another proxy war. The Vietnam War. That's another proxy war where we're fighting with the Russians through Vietnam. Definitely a lot of debates with the French, how they handle Vietnam. Another proxy war is the Russians in Afghanistan, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis. We have been fighting these proxy wars for years because it makes money. It's all about the economy. These politicians love to get their hands into it. It's great to send young men off to war when you don't have to fight it.
Yeah, you know, Ted Cruz, that interview came off a lot like the Dan Bongino Cash Patel interview, you know? Whatever happened to Lion Ted Cruz, you know? This, that image that Ted Cruz portrayed a couple years ago, yeah? But I think that there's a lot that's going on that the public is being kept in the dark about right now. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's about the money, and it's about the bond market, and it's about China no longer buying out debt like they did. And that's a massive problem for America because we play, since the 1970s, America gave China a lot of tech, and help advance its civilization from third world to literally first world overnight. And the problem with that is China was supposed to open up and let BlackRock and all these companies come in and own their corporations and their economy. And China said no. And there's a lot of problems now because America has this massive debt, and Trump is making changes behind the scenes that's not talked about to help with that debt. And the situation in Iraq and the proxy wars that we're having in Iran and the proxy wars that we're having is all to kind of shape the globe, and maintain that hegemony. And the reason why Ted Cruz is uncomfortable there is because they don't want to talk about that, because they don't want to let the public know what's really behind the push for war in Iran. And I saw a lecture by a Harvard professor last night, and he said this a year ago, by the way, right? He predicts that we're going to war with Iran. We're going to war 100%.
I personally think we're in war right now.
Oh, I agree.
Cruz said that we're in war and we're doing military action. Israeli news has been reporting for 3 days that we're bombing Iran. I personally think we're at war right now. Your local Fox, Newsmax, and all of them just aren't telling you. Yeah. I personally think that we're at war right now. I mean, Ted Cruz says in that interview that we're doing military action right as we speak. And the thing is, like, you're not allowed to question or ask anything. And that's it's a big problem, dude. It's a big problem that 3 months ago, Tulsi Gabbard, who, by the way, I wasn't a fan of, and you guys heard me say it 1,000 times. Why are we appointing all these Democrats in the cabinet? She said that Iran has no nuclear capabilities. She's the head of national intelligence. And then everyone's like, oh, it's the deep state's real. And she's an idiot. And I'm like, well, you loved her 3 seconds ago. You loved her the day she said it, but she said it. And then they asked Trump, well, Tulsi Gabbard said they had no nuclear capabilities. And he literally just said, I don't care what she said. Not, oh, she was wrong. Oh, we got new information. No, he said, I don't care what she said. And so, like, that was my criticism of it. And then, like I said, I definitely want to deep dive in the interview. But this is one thing I think this clip is the most ridiculous. And by the way, everyone's hanging on that he didn't know the number of people in Iran, or he didn't know the Bible passages that he was talking about. I don't care about any of that. I care about that he was standing on a house of sand, and he doesn't have a strong reasoning as to why he thinks we should help Israel and why he thinks we shouldn't be in war with Iran. And he clearly lied when he was describing AIPAC. He clearly was lying. And Tucker's like, come on, dude. Like, I'm not trying to back you in a corner. I'm just asking you a question. You know what I mean? And like, people hang on this clip too, that he doesn't know the Bible passage. Listen, he's not a biblical scholar, but I'm not going to do what Eric Adams did to me and what the NYPD did to me and tell you what you read in the Bible and that this is fact. But in my opinion, what he's saying here is so highly flawed and disgusting. It takes a lot to offend me, dude. I was like, he offended my intelligence. He offended my faith. And I've never seen anybody do something like this ever. And I was like, wow, what? I was like, I was like I said, I always thought Ted Cruz was smug. I thought he was smarter than everyone. But like, this is ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing I heard in the interview.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel. Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister,
right?
What?
But just like, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle
This is
there.
silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
You believe
Israel.
that's what God was talking about in
Yes.
Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70
No, but
years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is.
I mean, Eric, you're Jewish. What do you think about what Ted Cruz is saying here?
This is a lot of tap dancing around, but this is tap dancing around to try to justify why we're going to war. They're combining church, God, country, core. Something that we always talked about in the Marine Corps, right? And say God, country, core. Because the reality is, they say there's separation between church and state, but these politicians are trying to combine church and state right now to justify it. So there's no doubt in my mind that the war has started, right? This happened in Vietnam. If you look at the history of Vietnam, there was all these secret operations that were happening. They were secretly sending men to fight over in Vietnam, little operations, and it was all-out war until the public actually knew about it. And what's interesting about that is, so the Marines can deploy anywhere overseas and take action, also specialized units like the Green Berets and the Rangers, without an act of Congress. So we can have military action.
Did we just lose him?
Yeah,
we
something
lost
just
him.
happened.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull him off. I'm gonna pull him down.
Yeah. So if I may, about Vietnam, Eric is absolutely right. This is going to, the professor also talked about that. He talked about how this is a no-win situation for America.
Yeah. No, sorry. I don't know what happened here. But who knows? Maybe it's stalling. Anyway, the bottom line is we've had secret operations, and I'm sure the secret operation is going on right now. You don't need to act of Congress to deploy the Marines, these specialized units. And that's why in this interview, you can tell the underlying information is that the war has already started. And they use them like this biblical terms to justify it. This is scary stuff right now. It's scary stuff. And it just goes to show you, Democrats and Republicans, they all love war because it makes money. They could care less that they're sending men over there right now. Does Iran have these nuclear weapons? They were saying no. And all of a sudden now, they have them. Are we going to receive opposition just as we did in 2003 when I deployed to Iraq from the UN? A lot of countries were not in alliance with us at the time, right? We were having a big conflict with the French. We weren't even calling French fries anymore. We call them freedom fries. So let's see what happens right now. Will the world leaders get behind Trump in this? I don't know.
What I believe is going to happen is a lot of the countries are going to get pulled into, in particular Europe, because Europe doesn't want Iran to close the Strait of the Strait of Hamas. Basically, there's the strait that they don't want Iran to exert its influence over it, which would drive up oil prices in the region. So I think it's going to pull in a lot of Europe, and you could already see with the British and the French saying they're going to go in and support Israel, right? The problem is, like in Vietnam, there's a phrase called sunken cost fallacy, right? What it means is it's our tendency to continue with an endeavor we're invested in it with money, effort, or time, even if the costs outweigh the benefits. Basically, it's arrogance. We get into something, and because of arrogance and ego, we continue going down that road, even though we know we're losing. And that's Vietnam. You know, America knew it was losing, and what did we do? We continue sending troops to the meat grind of Vietnam, and that's a problem here because you can see that with Trump's ego already. his ego is so big that I don't think he's going to want to back off, and not go forward with this. And the minute we get into it, what's going to happen? There's going to eventually be boots on the ground, because Iran is so mountainous that you can't just bomb it from a distance. It's like Afghanistan. You can't bomb it from a distance. You got to send in troops. And the Russians saw that during the 80s, that you can't bomb it from a distance. That these fighters will just hide in the hills and then lob rockets at your planes and your helicopters and blow them out the sky. So eventually you're going to have to get boots in the ground there. And once boots in the ground are in there, you're going to get fighters that are dug into the mountains or wherever in Afghanistan. And you're going to have a long, drawn-out, bloody conflict that America is not going to win. We just can't win with that region. So this fallacy is something that's dangerous, and I think that the egos involved here, they're going to have to step back. Otherwise, it's going to be a messy road for this country.
John, before you go, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to say, Marlon, you're absolutely right. The terrain is so important when it comes to military action and war. And we learned the terrain in Iran, Afghanistan is so complex and mountainous that it's something you just can't have direct hits. People that don't understand military action, they just think you send over drones. But the terrain and the way it's designed, and the Russians will tell you, Russians were in Afghanistan for 10 years. You know what they accomplished? Nothing. One of those powerful militaries in the entire world, they accomplished nothing.
But the bottom line is this. I get it. Like I get the whole war strategy, but we just had a sitting senator, presidential candidate one time, come up and tell you that our country, that Christians are biblically commanded to follow everything and anything that the government of Israel is doing. I mean, I've never heard of something like this in my life. I mean, honestly, Ted Cruz should step down immediately. I'm not talking about the logistics of Afghanistan or the logistics of Iran or anything else. I'm talking about you have a senator sitting here and telling you that biblically, as a Christian, I have to do and say anything that Benjamin Netanyahu, the democratically elected leader, and all of the people of Israel want to do regardless of what they do. Highly flawed, highly deceptive, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, I don't think this is recoverable, but I didn't think the things that Eric Adams did were recoverable. I mean, just the logic here. The logic is this. If Israel today said, you know what, we're just going to start burning our own people in ovens and we're going to put them in concentration camps. Or you know what, we're going to kill all the Christians. Or you know what, we're just going to starve all of you to death. Or we're just going to nuke the entire world. And I'm not saying any of this is going to happen or has happened. But I'm just saying, if Israel did any of those things, Ted Cruz told you that biblically, I have to support that. That's what he just said. I'm like, I'm really scared about that statement. I'm really disturbed about that statement. I'm listening to all these biblical scholars and these religious figures talk about that he didn't know what part of Revelations it was in, and he didn't, whatever. He didn't know what part of the Bible it was in, and then it was actually in Acts 23. They were both wrong. It was actually in Acts 23, the statement that he was talking about. I don't care about any of that. I don't care if you know where the story of King David was or the Sermon on the Mount. I don't care if you know the exact thing. I care that like you're at least giving an honest representation of what you read in the Bible and not trying to misuse your faith and treat Christians like they're morons and treat our country like we're morons. And that's what he did. To me, it was totally disgusting, dude. Totally, totally disgusting. I cannot believe what I heard.
I think it's a great perspective. As I was saying earlier, you talk about church and state. We're supposed to separate church and state when it comes to politics. But it shows what's the reality. It's not church and state. It comes down to money and people. And that's what this is really about, because Israel gives a lot of money, and that's where they make their money off. So I think that it is insulting, and he's trying to sell this biblical ideology of why we should go to war. You can tell he doesn't even believe it himself. I think it is an insult. I get it. It's an insult to Christians. It's an insult to Jews. I think it's an insult to Americans completely. I just think that Americans are being used so that these politicians could still fill their pockets. I know Israel gives money to Ted Cruz, so this is just warmongers because they make money. The money says what? In God we trust. I don't even have the cash. Look at it. In God we trust. Really, it should be the politicians.
Yeah. If I may, John, that has already, figuratively speaking, that's already happened. Because look, half of Tel Aviv is being bombed right now by the Iranians, and we got people. We have Israelis, Jewish Israelis, hiding out in their bunkers right now. Okay, they can't go outside anymore. Okay, their way of life has changed right now. Okay, and have they gotten back all the hostages yet? We aren't talking about the hostages anymore.
Oh,
So
they won. They won.
Already happened. Yeah,
they won. I thought we were getting all those back. I thought all the wars were going to end. They won.
And if you bring these points up, how this war isn't benefiting the regular Israelis in Israel, you're now anti-Semite, an anti-Semite for bringing that up. So it's already happened. And mind you, what's even crazy about this is that Ted Cruz is saying this while they're trying to change the Overton window of anti-Semitism to include any sort of criticism about Israel and about the war. So this is absolute, and about Christianity too. So this is all nuts to me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Eric Adams just signed a letter. But I will say, will give Eric Adams one credit. Thanks for following this podcast and our posts, because I've been beating the crap out of him all week about that they were adopting into legislation all of the definitions of the HIRAs, the IHRAs, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. So New York City just adopted that. One of their definitions is any claims that the Jews killed Jesus, which is a foundational belief in Christianity, right? Because that's how Christianity started, right? The Jews handed Jesus over to the Romans to be executed, and then Jesus rose from the dead, right? That is a foundational belief. That is cited in the New Testament numerous times, right? So they label all of those times that it's cited in the New Testament as anti-Semitic. And then they go further to, if you believe that in that your beliefs are anti-Semitic, and it's actually one further. If you believe that the Jews killed Jesus, which is the foundational belief of Christianity, you're anti-Semitic. So therefore, not only claiming that the New Testament is anti-Semitic, but also all of Christianity is. So like, we're all anti-Semites now, and there's Christians pushing this. I mean, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, why would you do this? But to Eric Adams' credit, he, unlike members of Congress, like the little Mary, Mike Lawler, and the rest of them, unlike those guys that I support Iran and Israel, but they don't support America. Unlike those guys, Eric Adams listed the definitions, but he left that one part out. And so you guys are welcome. Thank you. You're welcome, Cardinal Dolan, because you were too cowardly to say anything. And every other faith leader in New York City, completely too cowardly to say anything. The only reason that is not listed into that document is because I kept blasting him that he's outlawing Christianity and defining us as anti-Semites. Absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and by the way, we talked about this, Eric. How many times Jon Stewart does this skit? How many times throughout your life have you heard that Iran's days away from building nuclear bombs, or weeks away, or months away?
My entire life we've been hearing that, right? I mean, I think it happened even since 79 when Iran had the hostages. This has been happening forever. Since the beginning. We've seen old 80s movies about it. You watch old 80s movies, you can see movies where they talk about Iran building missiles and nuclear weapons. This is going on since the beginning of time.
Yeah. Let's play this. Let's play this Jon Stewart clip, and then let's end this off. But it is ridiculous.
But what happened with Iran? Weren't we about to make a nuclear deal? Wasn't our deal maker in chief making a deal to keep Iran from enriching uranium? Actually, didn't we have a deal before our deal maker in chief so wisely pulled us from that deal? Why did this have to go balmy on Iran now?
And by next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage.
Iran is months away from having a nuclear bomb, says Netanyahu, in 2012. Why did we have to bomb Iran now?
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
Holy shit, that's why. Iran's only weeks away from having an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs, says Netanyahu. In 2015. 2015. Think about that. Back when we all thought, oh no, the Republicans might nominate that madman Jeb Bush. Should have gone with the question mark. No, seriously, I'm not being facetious. I really want to know why we had to bomb Iran now.
We're going to show you Iran's secret nuclear files. Here's the warhead. Here's the bomb.
And that's from 2018.
All right, you get the point. But like, I actually have clips from 2016. I'm sorry, from 1996 of Netanyahu saying they're weeks away. 1996, there are clips out there in the news. So like, that's how long we've been hearing about that. And I'm not saying, listen, there might be info out there. And then I say, all right, yeah, bomb them. And I say the same thing. If they tried to kill President Trump, let's go to war. But that's not what Ted Cruz is saying. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying we're going to support Israel and what they do. And I'm flabbergasted by the whole thing. I am. Sorry.
Yeah, if I may, John, there's an article from 1985 when Netanyahu was saying Iran is weeks away from a nuclear bomb too. So it goes back
1985, exactly. Our entire lives.
Yeah.
Our entire lives.
He didn't say, in his defense, he didn't say how many weeks. Maybe it was 8,000 weeks. How many weeks?
That's a good point. That's a great point. That's a great point. Last thing before we get out of here. I know we went a while today, guys. Thanks for staying with us. 3 hours, 30 minutes. We're a little light today. I think we only had about 600. Juju thinks that that's funny. I still say, I don't care if there's 6 people here, 600, 6,000, 60,000, doesn't matter to me. Actually, and 600 is very impressive to me. So when I talk to other podcasters and they're like, dude, I'm only getting 500 views or 300 views. I'm like, you had 300 people that sat there and listened to what you had to say for 2 hours. You did really good, bro. I don't know what the hell you're complaining about, So I'm blessed in this room, and I know that you guys feel the same way. If there's 2 people, if there's 3 people, if it's us 3, we're going to talk about it. It doesn't matter, so appreciate everybody for being here today. Last thing, was it the 6'7" Special Ops Lieutenant or the 7'5" Special Ops Lieutenant? Just your thoughts on this real quick. So Mobile Field Force in out of the 6'7". Let me make sure I'm saying this right. Mobile Field Force out of the 6'7" precinct. So the Special Projects Lieutenant is telling the supervisors of the Mobile Field Force detail to tell all the cops that are on the Mobile Field Force detail to not talk to his cops. He doesn't want the cops coming into the command talking to the FDU cops. Completely divisive. Obviously, all of the supervisors and the cops that are on the Mobile Field Force are taking that as a slap in the face, and they feel as if he's pitting cops against cops, and it's not tactically sound. It's not safe. It's not friendly. It's not a nice work environment. And the only thing, I had multiple people reach out to me about it. And the only thing I could say is that there are numerous people that I've been so blessed to work with so many great people, but there are numerous people that I've encountered in my time in the NYPD that come to work and make the job worse than it has to be for everybody. And I don't know that you're that guy. to the 6-7 special projects lieutenant. I don't know that you're that guy that you come to work and you take all your own personal issues out on everyone that you supervise, and you take out all your aggressions and your anxieties on your coworkers. I don't know that you're that guy, but by doing that, what you're doing is you're making the job worse, not only for those mobile field force detectives, but for your own FTU guys, for yourself, for the supervisors. Absolutely wrong. Eric, what do you think about that? Don't have your guys talk to my guys.
I mean, you just answered it well, right? It's divisive. It creates a hostile environment. The veteran cops, the cops that are out, the seasoned cops should have communication with the FTU cops. They should be asking questions. Absolutely. I mean, if there's a call for help or an 85 and the cops need to help, who's going to help? The cops going to help each other. It just goes back to what I've been saying for a long time, because you answered it well. I didn't even need to go further into it. But what is the job? The job is people. And if you have good people, you go to work, it's a great job. If you have bad people, you have bad leaders, the job sucks. So that's what the job is, people.
Yeah, no, but like when I was, it just like hearing the story and having a couple of people reach out about it, it just brought me back to when I was a rookie. I'm going to tell you a rookie story I had. I'm in like Port Richmond. It's me and another kid, and we're in Port Richmond, and anti-crime stops a car, and they toss the car. So like young, eager cops, we go over to help them, and they tell us to get out of here. They're like, don't come over here when we're doing car stops. You leave us, like, don't do that. And whatever. I had words with the kid real briefly, and that was it. And I never spoke to him again after that. Like, I had words with the person that said that. They were with their sergeant. Sergeant didn't say anything. And so I'm like, wow, what losers, right? I was like, screw them, you know? So then we go stand on the corner like two idiots. We don't help them. And then warrants comes rolling through like a week later, and they stop a guy on the same corner, dude. They're doing a car stop. And we don't go over, right? Because like we were told, don't come over when we're doing those stops, right? So I don't know. I was like, I had a sergeant basically chew me out and tell me don't come over when they're doing stops. So we don't go over. And to the warrant guys' credit, they came over, the detectives, and they're like, guys, you know, we're over there doing a car stop. Why wouldn't you come assist us over there? And I was like, honestly, I want to. I said, that's why we stayed close to you, but we didn't want to get involved because last week we had the anti-crime sergeant, the whole team told us don't come over. I don't know where you guys are from, if you're anti-crime, if you're in the precinct. And I'm just kind of following what they train. They're like, that's absolutely wrong. Whoever told you that's a moron, blah, 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 blah. And like, you're creating bad environments. You're creating hostile work environments. You're creating bad people, and you're putting people at a tactical disadvantage. And that's what they did to me, and they did to everybody else, right, by doing that. And so like I just had a flashback of that when I heard about that. I was like, wow. I was like, so dumb, you know?
Yeah, you know, I think that happens a lot on the job. There are some cops who think they're such hot shit, you know, that they don't want, you know, you stay over there, Ricky. Don't come over here. You know, you know, it's like we have different departments within the same department, and we see a lot of that with the CRT guys. You know, now I'm not saying they were arrogant, but I'm saying it's that similar culture of you know, we're hot shit. You know, you don't come over here, Ricky. You know, and I think that's especially in the way we see things going now, that attitude needs to change, you know, because we're all we got. And, you know, things keep deteriorating in this department, you know. So
I just got to laugh because you talk about a rookie story, but I have this one rookie story that just I'll always remember, never goes away. But it's kind of like talk about the relationship of how cops kind of bullshit each other. But it was day one. I'm on foot in Park Hill in the confines of 120 precinct. I'll never forget. Warrant squad comes and like, listen, we'll look for this guy. He was wanted for a homicide. And they give us the picture. And sure enough, dumb luck, about an hour later, boom, we see the perp. We start chasing through Park Hill, and I think it was 160. Chase him through the building, get outside. My radio falls all over the place. I pick it up. We managed to apprehend him. And the warrant guy comes swooping in, takes the perp, and he's like, don't worry, I got you. You'll get the assist. So I'll never forget it. I'm like, wow, I'm getting assist. I'm brand new. I'm like, all right, we got the perp. I'm looking around. I'm asking guys, where's the assist? Like, where does that go? There is no assist. Anyway, it's all about relationship with cops. So I'll never forget if you I'm sure that guy's retired by now. If you watch this podcast, you had me laugh for a long time. For about a month, I'm looking for this assist that didn't exist. So joke was on me. Thank you, brother.
The assist. You got it, bro. And assist on it.
Where does that exist?
Yeah. All right, fellas. Anything before we get out of here? 3 hours, 40 minutes. Long show today. Fridays, we usually go long. Like I said, Monday, we'll go back, regular format. Wednesday, we'll probably have an interview. So anything before we get out of here? Marlon, you got anything?
Well, you know, this episode could have easily been called Sunken Cost Fallacy. Because if you look at what we talked about earlier, you see the reason why they did what they did is because they're already in so deep, you know, that again, so deep, you got to cover it up, and then the cover up becomes worse than the actual initial incident. And you're seeing that again with like we just talked about Iran and Israel, you know, and the US going in there. It's like, we're in so deep already, you know, we got to keep going in, you know. Netanyahu, by the way, has corruption allegations against him, and he needs the war right now to keep him out of jail. So again, it's like people being too deep, and we're seeing the costs in either case. So
no, yeah. But Vaughn, don't we're not allowed to criticize. We got Marty 88 here. This was something I got a lot this week too. Is I never served overseas, so I'm not allowed to criticize Donald Trump or any military action. I'm not allowed to say anything about it. Only people that serve. John, it's blatantly obvious you never served overseas in the military. You should apply now for the reserves. It would serve you well in your future political endeavors. I've had plenty of offers to run for office, and I haven't accepted one of them. And if I did something, I would do it because I think that I would be effective at it, and it's something I want to do. And it's not something I would do like probably you, Marty, who signed up to be in the Marines so that you could run for Congress, right? Or be in the reserve Marines and have your Aunt Nancy Pelosi bump you up a couple of ranks, and then all the guys in your platoon hate your guts. And yeah, I wouldn't do that to just put my name on it and I could put the banner, look, I served. No, I wouldn't do that, but I'm going to keep criticizing. I never served in the Marines. Thank you to those who did, though. Thank you for those that served overseas, Marines, Navy, Air Force. I didn't do it. Like I said, I was a dumb kid. I give you guys all the shout out in the world, but don't dare anybody for 1 second tell me that I'm not entitled to my opinion. Because you serve does not give you the right to voice your opinion over me. Just doesn't. Sorry, or anybody else for that matter.
If I may, John, we love the military here, and we love them so much that we don't want to see them get used at all or have to go to war. Okay?
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm glad you said that. That's what I wanted to say, Marlon. I served in war. I was in Iraq in 2003 for almost a year. We don't want to just arbitrarily send our men and women overseas. War is hell. Let's be honest. War is hell. And the worst part of war is not even just the fighting. It's the boredom. Every day feels like a week. Every day feels like a month. It's, you're away from your family. I have no problem with people criticizing. We should be able to criticize the military. We criticize police. We criticize. Be fair. Be respectful. But we all have an opinion. We should have it. That's what this podcast is about. Opposition meets opportunity. We all have an opinion. I don't expect everybody to serve in the military. It wouldn't be precious and important if everybody did. Thank you so much for Friday Roundtable. 3 hours and 42 minutes. You heard it here. New York's finest Unfiltered podcast. The finest Unfiltered network. We'll be back Monday. As always, Marlon, thank you so much for all the stuff you do behind the scenes. Great investigation. You heard a lot of information here about all cops are woke and the allegations and charges that we made in our case. It's not going away, not for us. We're not foolish. We know the police department's not going to do anything, but we have to keep pushing forward. Thank you, everyone, as always. John closes out, brother.
No, that's it. And Juju said I could run for New York City office from Florida. I mean, Eric Adams made that blueprint. He ran for New York City mayor. He ran for the Brooklyn borough president. He ran for New York state senator, all from Fort Lee, New Jersey. Right. And we have it all well documented in his Zoom. So, I guess he set the blueprint. So shout out. He was the forerunner in that. So it's very possible. It's very, very possible.
Yeah. And Letitia James has an address in Virginia. So.
Letitia James, she's a resident, right? She's a resident of Virginia. I mean, Eric Adams, I'm giving it to credit to him. He was the forerunner in that whole thing. So like I said earlier, I appreciate all you guys for going on here. Open discussion. Definitely not sensitive. Shout out to the military. And like I said, like I've told everybody in the past, my father was a combat veteran, severely injured, came back with terrible PTSD, and he was treated like garbage, not only from this government, from the country he served, to everybody. I mean, and I watched him, and thankfully he was the best case. He was one of the best case scenarios out of everybody that he served with. The other guys were homeless, drug addicted, really couldn't function at all in society. My father could function very little in society. So I know the effects that war has on people, and I don't take it lightly. And I love watching these little shouldered, skinny neck, fat-bodied men run around and warmonger, knowing that they'll never go off to war or send their children off to war. And I think it's absolutely disgusting, because believe me, if I'm calling for a war, and like I said, if Iran tried to kill our president, sign me up. I'm for it. I'll go. But if I'm not willing to do it, I'm not pushing it. And I'm talking about I'll go into my 60s because I'll still be able to.
Yeah. Speaking of, if you get a chance to watch social media, John was doing some pull-ups, so for fun, I did some one-handed push-ups. I don't know what other physical fitness stuff would be next, but we're having some fun with some videos. Testosterone is okay. You should be masculine. Put that back in the NYPD. Put that back in all law enforcement. Captain Chaos Coffee and Donuts, $9.99. He says donuts on me. Thank you so much. Awesome show. Patrick Donahue, we had a great day. We showed some stamina, almost 4 hours, still sitting in the same seat. Haven't went to the bathroom yet, so we'll hold it down. Not bad for men in their 40s, right? Marlon, thank you as always. John, guys, let's do it.
Oh, last thing before I close, shout out to Tom, KB, Small White Wolf, Class of 8311, Rich, OG, Snake Plissken, Captain Chaos. Who else we got? And Captain Chaos. Thank you guys for all the donations. We appreciate you, everyone. Thanks everybody else for the love and support. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you Monday. Later.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?